You're listening to Ernestly Speaking, the only weekly podcast that covers friends, foes, and anything that goes. And now, for your badass host, Ernest Owens. And we're back for another episode of Ernestly Speaking with your host, Ernest Owens, myself. Wow, we're getting closer and closer to the end of summer. I already know how I feel about holidays and things. For me, it's not over just yet. It's funny how everyone was so quick to call in summer much earlier, but I'm still not fully ready to say summer's over. It's getting close, but it is not over. I am just thinking about next week, or I guess the end of this week, because next week, yeah, I guess summer would be over. It'll be past Labor Day weekend, and next week, because next week is September. This is the last week of August. I guess summer is about to be over. We have one more grand finale weekend, that Labor Day weekend, or however you call it, and I'm definitely going to get very, very lit between then. I mean, even this past weekend, I had quite the time. I think it's interesting. August really is truly peak summer. As much as I thought July was, it's July. It's in the throes. But I really feel like August is when it really hits. At least for me, it does. I feel like everything, all the seasonal foods, the corns, the tomatoes, watermelon. I think everything just hits this flavor profile that's out of this world, combined with just, I don't know, the flow of events. People are really into it. But the best season and across the board is on its way. Fall and Libra season. My favorite, literally, I love fall. Fall is my favorite season. But I really do enjoy summer. And I guess the older I get, the more I have appreciated summer. Because in the past, I would kind of feel summer, it's it's hot, right? Which I'm not so crazy. I'm not so mad about the weather being warmer or whatever, but it'd be it's super hot. But then also I have this mindset about it where it just feels like it can get real redundant. The fashion, the turn ups, it's okay, everything's outside, a beach, outdoor thing, seafood. It can feel the same thing for a long period of time. Versus fall, I feel I love fall because there's complexity. Is it warm enough to do this, or is it getting a little chilly? You can mix up the jackets and the cardigans and sweaters, and I don't know. I feel fall weather is it's not too hot. It's definitely not too cold. It's a nice mix to switch up the look. You can get a little darker with it. You can still get away with a couple of light pieces, but don't you wear that white. It's a it's a very, flexible season. And as a Libra, I mean, it's just perfect timing. And then the scents are better, and the smells, and things get a little warmer and cozier. So yeah, fall is my favorite season. I think winter might be my least favorite. I'm chill with spring. Spring is fun. But if I was to rank them, I would rank fall number 1, summer number 2, spring number 3, and then winter number 4. Yeah, I think that's my rankings. So I'm excited to head into fall. Plus, I'm ready to get. I work all year round, but the rest of the world clearly doesn't. So for someone like myself who's a lot more productive in the summer compared to a lot of my peers, I am ready for fall. I'm ready for y'all to come the fuck back to work. I'm ready for people to not be on vacation and have, and have a focus. Because to be honest, for journalists, especially like myself, you all know this summer might have been a lot more productive than we may have personally wanted but history had to be made. So I feel like I vacation and all that, but because I work for myself, I feel like vacation, taking breaks is more of a year-round thing rather than one season thing. But capitalism doesn't make that possible for everybody. So I understand. But it's back to school. It's back to work. It's back to fall, baby. And I do find fall, in my opinion, be the most productive season of the year because, when you come in through the winter in the beginning of the year, everyone does the whole new year, new job, new vision, all that new year resolution stuff that falls out the window by February. And it's the beginning of the year kind of vibe. And then spring is weird because spring, there is a lot more uptip and progression, but then there's that anticipation of, it's about to be, summer, and it's also the tail end of some people's years and fiscal years or whatnot. So there's always this level of low vibrational productivity to some extent. And then summer, everyone's just checked out, right? Because it's vacations and everything in between. But fall, you ain't got no excuse. You just came at the tail end of a great vacation period of time. It is not the beginning of the year, so the lessons learned from the first and second quarter should have been applied for this part. Don't even talk about, what's next because we know winter break is coming, the holidays and check out. But that fall, baby, what's the excuse? So I feel like the people's productivity level, I feel like is at its highest in the fall because everything else has been kind of taken care of. The end is towards the end, but you're in this lump where you can't check out because you just checked out for the summer, but you can't check out too much yet because the holidays is on the end. So you got to really come correct in the fall. So it is my favorite season for so many levels. I feel like there is just more creativity, fashion wise, food wise. We can get back to some heavier courses, more flavor. You just can't keep it light and tight. I don't want to hear anything about, summer body shit. Fall, baby, it's shawl season. You can eat a little more. You can do what you want to do, baby. You can get a little layery, okay? I just think fall is just the best for everybody. And we love a fall wedding. Like, my wedding was in the fall. We love a fall wedding where you can have all of the opulence and decadence at a lower cost because they exploit the hell out of you in the spring and the summer based on sunshine. Yes, fall is that girl. It is. You gotta admit it. You gotta admit it. Libra season, peak fall behavior. You know what I'm saying? It's just peak. I don't know nothing about these Scorpios and Virgos have an identity crisis. They're on the cusp. They don't know if they want to be summery or they want to be fall. They're kind of just like a placeholder before the real McQuay walks in, named the Libra, and then we take it over. But I just wanted to open this episode with that type of division. But nonetheless, around this time last week, rather than go to the DNC, I went to Dallas, Texas, and I taped what is my first episode on Dr. Phil. And I say first because the experience I had, which I will not get into all the explicit details right now because I want you all to watch the show first before I tell you the behind the scenes. It was an incredible episode. And what I mean by incredible is that I'm not saying that it was lollipops and smiles and roses and just like whatever. It was incredible because it was great TV. There is debate. There is drama, to a certain extent. It was all unscripted and it was very raw and the cameras rolled and I did my thing. I did what I need to do, as far as my role on the show. And I am all throughout the show. That's the one thing I will say is that the episode is an hour long. It's like regular hour TV. Because it's Dr. Phil Primetime, he's rebranded the show. It's an evening show, but it's also a show that is with heavier subject matter. Now, to be clear, Dr. Phil was always a little different in the daytime compared to his other colleagues in the industry, right? He did touch on like paternity tests. He touched on like certain drama, right? But daytime, you still had to keep that a little light. Dr. Phil Primetime is nothing light. It's heavy. It's some interesting, real ripped off the headlines discussion, debate. His brand is strong where he gets people out. Like he could get people, Dr. Phil got an audience. And with this new pivot, it's hitting 100 million homes in America. So roughly a third of American households will have access to see this show. We're looking at late September, early October. Because he tapes his shows in bundles, they kind of are scheduled out versus like the day, every other day kind of thing. But it will be coming out in the next couple of weeks. There's no specific date yet, but around the next couple of weeks. But definitely this fall will based on timeline, it will either show up late September, October at the very latest, to be honest, in my opinion, like at late October at the very latest. But definitely was able to do the show. Very, very, the show is going, it's definitely going to be a moment. I'm excited to see what you all think. And once the episode airs, I will tell you all the behind the scenes of how they executed that, because producers are quite fun. What I will say for now on certain levels, what I will say is everything was real. It was contentious naturally. Like we were talking about cancel culture. So to give some context, I was invited to come on the show because of my book. Dr. Phil read my book. He said cover to cover. And because he was doing research, he wanted to understand, he wanted to do an episode on cancel culture, and he wanted to understand the complexities and nuances of it because, with these shows, and especially the type of shows that Dr. Phil do, he's very much, for better or for worse, interested in both sides of an issue and likes to get that. Because, that does make TV. There has to be a level of contrast. And with cancel culture, what made my book very unique and still is in this market is that I'm one of the few who've written a mainstream book. I'm really the only one. I'm actually going to say that because I've been still keeping my eye on what's out in the market around this topic. But I am like the only mainstream published book that is giving a pro argument for cancel culture and is even striving to redefine it differently compared to how it's being talked about in mainstream media. And in certain ways, that has made my presence polarizing on certain types of networks, right? So people are often like, well, why are you not on CNN? Why are you not this? First of all, personally, I don't find CNN or MSNBC or Fox News to be the litmus test of the confirmation of an issue or a current issue in America. To be honest, outside of flat news reporting from CNN and them, they're very biased. They have a certain agenda, and that's just what it is over there with cable news, right? So they want a certain person to say certain things the way that they want them to be said. And if you're not willing to say it that way, they don't really want to have you on TV or have you on their channel. It is very black and white. There is really no middle. And then and the thing is, when they want middle, they don't want middle, right? So they don't want like a voice like mine. And if you listen to the TV, right, everybody is either super extremely blue or they're super extremely red. Like they don't have any middle ground when they take certain positions. And then the ones that do are just being intellectually dishonest. Like for example, like CNN talks about undecided voters, right? But we're finding out through the research that these quote unquote undecided voters are not really undecided. They're like extreme supporters. There's this black guy who was talking during the DNC, and we're going to talk more about the DNC, but he was on there talking about how, he just still isn't impressed with Kamala Harris as president. Like he still is undecided, whatever. But they looked him up on the internet and found that he has been a gun-ho Trump supporter and had a whole fan account and everything else. So like I said, people are pretending and people are lying to try to get clout and get visibility to push certain messages. Like, I don't believe any of these people. And so someone like myself, you all know how very balanced, well, very honest about the pros and the cons of folks. That's just how I've been trained. And so I'm not going to lie, right? I can acknowledge one aspect of a group, but then also be critical about certain aspects. Like I'm going to be doing, I can see all those things. And as a Black queer millennial, neither political party has been able to earn my most 100% loyalty as a voice, right? Now, one party clearly has my loyalty at the ballot box because the other alternative is too crazy. But just because I will vote Democrat does not mean I cannot critique the Democratic Party on how they can be better and how they can move differently, right? I can hold all of those different experiences. And I think the problem is that when you go on those types of cable news channels, they want you to either say everything is good or everything is bad. They don't want you to say, yeah, I like this and this is what I believe or whatever, but and they don't want that. And the issue is too is that their programming likes to create certain types of identities and stereotypes. Like Black Democratic voices on their shows typically are older. They don't really bring younger Black political voices on their shows. Like people like me, like 32-year-old like myself, they don't want me on that show because I'm going to say, yes, the Democratic Party is doing their thing and I'm going to vote for Kamala Harris for president. However, the Democratic machines and establishment in certain cities is making it harder for people to engage in voting. Like, they don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear anything that pushes, unless I'm a Republican where like Michael can be the Black conservative and he can say the same things that I feel, but because he is on the right, he gets to say it because he's the considered on the right. That irks me. Like that pisses me off because there are some things that you can be honest about all of these things, but then this guy, right, the Shawn Michaels of the world, won't fully critique a Trump or a Republican agenda in 2024. They won't address Project 2025, right? They will lie in one aspect to defend a certain side. So the intellectual dishonesty on both of these type of cable shows, it doesn't work for someone like me. But ironically, Piers Morgan, he wants, like when I'm on his show, you know, they kind of want me there because I can be able to, you know, concede to certain points, but I'm also able to go 10 toes down on, you know, what I don't agree with or what I don't like. I'm able to be an actual human in some sense of like having the complexities and being able to not, like, I'm able to have a fair debate, a more fair debate. Now, some people on the show that come on Piers Morgan's show, you know, they have their extremes, but there are others that are on the show that are kind of like, hey, I'm in the middle. And there's some people that's like, look, I'm on the left, but I do see certain concerns that could be better, right? I have a brain basically on those shows. And I feel like I can express myself and they're not telling me what to say. They're not trying to pigeonhole me to be one way or another, right? And so with Dr. Phil's show, what I appreciate about those conversations is that there were nuances, there were opportunities to push back and say, look, I understand this, but the way you went about it was not the right way, arguably, right? Like, I can do all of those things on a show like that. Even if in some air, right, you can tell that, you know, Dr. Phil's an older white man, he's a boomer, he is more conservative. I don't think he's a full-blown Trumper. I mean, you know, not from what I experienced seeing him. I mean, whatever. He could be voting for Trump, right? But I do feel like when I interacted with him when I was on the show, that he is a lot more conservative, I think, by age, but he's not completely shutting down or not in the space to hear other people push back at some of those thoughts and some of that. And I can appreciate that. And I think it makes for a good show. And so I did feel like I was able to really get some points across. I definitely had some fun debate with certain folks that was on the show. What I will say now is that there were 3 guests on the show, different gender, age, and experiences in their lives that claimed that they were canceled. Um, I won't get into who they are, but they've had experiences that were ripped from the headlines. So these people, you definitely might have heard about them in the news. One of them I know a lot of y'all heard about in the news because we've even talked about this person on my show. None of them are celebrities, so it's no Candace Owens. Let me get that out the way. But these are just people who have went viral, for certain experiences, and they come from very different political spectrums, and ages and things. So it was a very diverse mix of experiences that shaped how they felt like they were canceled. I serve as the expert on the show where I got to, of course, plug my book and talk about the book, but also got to advise them. So if you ever watch a Dr. Phil show or any of these types of daytime shows, but really Dr. Phil, there's always like an expert of sorts, like a clinical consultant or a psychologist or something like that, where they or a legal expert, that they kind of sit and they kind of evaluate these things and offer their advice and give feedback. That was me. So I'm throughout the entire show where each segment, of these, there was like 3 big segments, 3 different case studies. I'm throughout the show, weighing in feedback and things. So I enjoyed that. I did really good. I'll give myself that credit. The producers loved me. They were surprised by how much of the fire I was going to bring. Dr. Phil and I had a talk after the taping of the show, and he definitely wants me to come back. He gave me a very nice gift, which I wasn't expecting. Very, very engaged, very much like what I brought to the table, and definitely want to see more of me. And I said, hell yeah. So it was awesome. I got to meet his wife, Robin. Everyone loves Robin McGrath. This is McGraw, I think. Yeah, Dr. Phil McGraw. Yeah, McGraw, Mrs. McGraw, who's always in the show. She's like on the production side of it, when she has her own entrance when she comes out that's not on the show but before the show, and the way that people go up for her, oh, they love Mrs. Dr. Phil, honey. They love them some Robin. She is like and Dr. Phil loves his wife. Like she's been, anybody who's a Dr. Phil, ever watched his shows, followed him, she's like a major star in the show. She doesn't, there's sometimes where she's on there and she talks and she does things, but in this episode she didn't. But she's very pivotal to the shows. She's like the mother of the show, basically, is how they describe her. And she is, big hair, big personality, very, very nice woman. I really enjoyed talking to her and connecting with her. But yeah, Dr. Phil was definitely feeling your guy. And yeah, it would be very fun to see the new journey of this, because it really happened quite fast. Like the week before last, like less than a week, right? I get a call. I'm doing a video call with the producers. I'm changing my schedule up. I'm booking things. I'm getting everything ready. I was a quick transition, and I want y'all to know in advance that my clothes that I got to wear were very, like, on that show with the camera. They don't do wild colors, so if you think I'm going to razzle dazzle, I keep it very moderate, dark colors, dark tie. I couldn't play around too much. Now I had I'll tell you this, I had a cute Burberry tie and pocket square, but it was a darker Burberry, so it's not the traditional like golden red stripe, because on air you can't do red stripes. You can't do red, you can't really do heavy patterns. With the camera they have, you really can't do too much. But I was able to wear my Burberry tie and Burberry pocket square combo, and I look good. It's very, very, very mindful, very demure. My look, dark colors. I have a light blue shirt, button-up shirt, and my nails. I had to change my nails because the way my nails were done, there was like a very like loud chrome look on the nail that if it interacts with the camera, it would offset or whatever. So I had to like I just made my nails a neutral color. Basically, I went clear and natural for my nails. But let's be very clear: this upcoming week is about to be fall, and these nails need a new fall color to welcome in the fall. So I won't be looking like this for too long. But I had to go natural for Dr. Phil, which I didn't feel bad about at all. I mean, TV is TV. I was not throwing away my shot. So, we made it do what it do. But it was a good time. It was great TV. I really just enjoyed everything. I mean, they had me in a black car. They flew me out, nice seats, nice food. I got some good barbecue while I was in Dallas. I was in a nice area. I stayed in a very nice hotel. They put me in a nice suite. Black car picking me up, taking me to my hotel, taking me to the airport. I mean, it was just, I had like a very nice 5-star experience. Everything about the trip was just real smooth. They were so on point. I got to shout the producers. Here's a diverse mix of producers, by the way. Like, they were great. They handled me with great care. The green room was popping. The makeup team was very nice. They looked at me. They first, when I walked in, they kind of thought I already had makeup on. I was like, oh no, this is my skin, baby. They were here for my skincare regimen, my skincare routine, and they didn't have to even put that much makeup on me. But when you're on TV like that with those cameras, you gotta have some makeup. But fortunately, I didn't need too much because when you already, what I'm saying, you don't really need to do too much with a porcelain doll. But they put some makeup on me. It was even tone. Even though that's why I was surprised. They were like, "Oh my God, your tone is so even already." Like, did you pre-up? I was like, "No, this is just my face." They were like, "Oh wow," and it's so funny because I could tell when the makeup artist, one of the dudes, he put something. He was like, when he's rubbing my face with something, he was trying to see if something was gonna come off. I was like, "I told you, there's nothing here." He was like, "Oh yeah." Like the makeup remover, I guess. But I didn't have any makeup on. But I think he just is like still trying to be careful. But it was, listen, when you take care and you invest and you put in the time, and of course genes, because one of my listeners will say, well, genes, genetics, yes, genetics as well, but also maintenance, because you can start off with a nice surface, but if you don't maintain the surface, it will crack. So that's also important. So it's genes and maintenance, versus just, one way or the other. But yeah, so Dr. Phil was just phenomenal. A really great time for sure. So I went out a lot. I went out a lot this week, dining wise, vibe wise. I first want to talk about the PABJ pool party that was on Sunday afternoon. PABJ is back. We come in with a vengeance. Fall is here. We are getting ready for our 50th anniversary celebration that is going to be on Saturday, November 9th at the Penn Museum. Okay? This is not a joke. It is about to be epic. Okay? Tickets are $175 for non-members. It will be, the money is going to support the organization. This is one of our big fundraisers, but also a really great event. I mean, we're talking open bar, we're talking great cuisine, we're talking hours of a good time, party, celebration, dancing, eating, drinking. It's full of surprises, full of great vibes throughout the entire evening. Lots of love, lots of excitement, extravagance. I haven't been to the Penn Museum like really in the past 3 years since my wedding. My 3rd year anniversary is in October 16th. But this gala will be the first time I've been at the Penn Museum since my wedding. And so there's been so many new renovations that wasn't there, 3 years ago. And we're going to take full advantage of the new spaces, the new decorum, and decorations and things. It's the decor. It's going to be, this is going to be epic. This is the best. This is probably the biggest production I've ever produced outside of my wedding. Like it's not nerve wracking. It is what it is. Like this is the biggest event I've ever like put together outside of my wedding. Like the level of attention to details, the looks, the feels, the food, all of these things are like a big damn deal. And so I'm super excited about what's to come. And yeah, like I can't wait. I really cannot wait for what's to come. I mean, the honorees have been notified and they've been confirmed. And the way that we're doing this award ceremony is unlike anything we've done before. And I'm just overjoyed that we're at this point of the game and I can't wait. So yeah, I really can't wait. Um, mm, the PABJ pool party was epic. Lots of new faces, lots of friends. Just a very good time overall. Some surprised people that I was like, oh wow, you came. It just felt like a black professional family reunion in Philly. Like everyone who was there, just from LBs, um, friends that I've known for years, PABJ members, all the great people. Shout out to Cashman Associates for being an incredible sponsor of the event. We had it at Valley Forge Casino in their Cabana area. And that could, first of all, let me just say, Valley Forge, look, I like a good casino. And I'm a casino girl, and I'm not even one that like gambles. Like I don't really gamble or anything, but I just love a casino. Valley Beach, yeah, the Valley Forge has Valley Beach. And, where we at Valley Beach, it is a beautiful just space. You got the pool, you got the shade, you got the tent, you got all the things, but it's vibey. And it was just so great to just see so many people that I hadn't seen since the end of spring. But it just felt like one big black family reunion, and just the connect with everybody. The drinks were on point, the food, it just was a good feel good experience, and just a perfect recharge to get everybody ready for the fall because we're here, and it was just beautiful. So just shout out to everybody who came out, who had a good time. It's very fun in these positions in this space because I can mix, you know, event like this, all the different aspects of my social life comes together. Like I have my personal friends, and I have, of course, my Greek family, and then also, my membership and everybody. So it's already fun to see the personalities and people get to know each other, who's heard of each other, seen each other on Instagram. And it was just fun to just see all those worlds combined. Now, when I have my birthday, I'm gonna get a little bit more selective. But it's nice to have like a general party to just bring everybody together and just link up and see all the cool connections. And so it was super fun. I'm very happy for everybody who came out and had a good time. So restaurants that I went to this week that I highly recommend. I did a lot of eating this week. I really enjoyed the restaurants I went to. I literally had duck 3 days in a row, so I'm a little spoiled right now, a little pampered. But I went to El Fiore for dinner with my good girl Lauren. We was in Bryn Mawr, and El Fiore is a rebrand from Fiore Russo, which I went to earlier this summer with Lauren. It was the same location. They just changed the name, and they rebranded their entire focus and everything like that. So that was a very interesting experience. I like it. It's basically the modern Italian vibe, contemporary Italian food, modern or whatever. But there's also like new American cuisine, like really great grand pork chops, seasonal flavors and ingredients. So it's like a hobnob between really, modern American, new American food with an Italian twist or Italian presence. There's pastas. There was a shrimp scampi that we had that was really good as well. They do bodinos for dessert. Really nice wine selection. I've been going like restaurants that really are invested in a really good wine collection. I have made a point to really drink wine at restaurants now. I always drink wine, but I'm very attentive. Like my new flow now is like lately. I'm not saying this is forever because it depends on the restaurant. But my new flow is that when I go to a really nice restaurant, and I mean really nice, right? If I notice that they are really have a wine collection, what I do is, and this has been my new MO, I will do a cocktail or two during the appetizer first course period, and then dinner I'm doing the wine. Now, if you're a pro like myself and you're big into wine, you know that if you're drinking really old bottle or you're doing something really, rich or heavy, you got to aerate it. And people are like, well, how do you do that at a restaurant? That's not a BYOB, whatever. No, you don't bring an aerator and you don't tell them that they can't. Now, some restaurants might do that for you. Get a bottle of wine. They'll put in a decanter, like really fancy. But if you're doing a glass, what I do is I will always tell the bartender, sometimes, in a nice restaurants, they give you some leeway, right? I'll say, listen, I want to get this cocktail, but can I order a glass of this, Cabaret? Can I get this glass of Bordeaux, whatever? I just want to have it sit out. If you are a good restaurant, they understand that because they understand what you mean by you want to because they basically know that you want to get that wine to aerate so that by the time dinner does come out or the heavier course does come out, that wine would have opened up and been ready for you to sip. And I see a lot of people that go to restaurants that order red wine on the spot, on the nose. Yes, there are restaurants that do have aerators or do try to do that. But honestly, it's nothing like having a good glass of red wine that is already decanted or already aerated naturally and sit still. So you don't have to twirl as much. Because if you do get a glass of wine, now, if you're getting a lighter body of red, they say with a glass, you can twirl for like 20 minutes, 30 minutes and get there. That's true. But sometimes if you don't really want to be at the table twirling red wine that you're not sipping on, just take it out, let it be the first thing you step in, look at that red wine menu, order that glass or bottle, depending on what you're doing, get it early and let it rest before we get to dinner. Because normally I don't drink the wine. I don't, and let me tell you, this does not apply to white wine. I don't drink white wine. I'm not a crazy white wine drinker, to be honest. But I do like my reds. And you don't have to aerate whites like that. So this is because it's super, super light. You don't really have to aerate white. You just get white wine when you want to get it. But when it comes to reds, though, just a pro tip, get the red when you get the first cocktail. Let the red sit. Enjoy your cocktails how they are. But prepare yourself. For the most recent dinners I've had that involved red, I've ordered early to be proactive in enjoying it. And I've enjoyed my wine at these restaurants a lot more because I've done it this way. So that's just my pro tip. But yeah, Il Fiore was wonderful. Great in the suburban restaurant. If you're in the suburbs around Bryn Mawr, Ardmore. I know a lot of my listeners, especially in the Pennsylvania area, you all live out. You all say Philly, but when you ask people where you really at, you really in Ardmore, you really in Havertown or some other place, okay, that's nearby, Laura Marion and all that. And y'all like to say Philly and when you talk to people, but you really live somewhere in these suburbs. So I have made it a point to go out to restaurants outside of Philadelphia proper to be able to give recommendations, even Jersey, right? So, and even Delaware. So that's why, I when I get an invitation to go out, I try to give some recommendations outside of that. I went to Soraya for an impromptu lunch with one of my good friends, Cassie, and it was very impromptu. And we went to Soraya for lunch. It was just like a random, like I didn't see it coming. It was right when I came back from Dr. Phil. So that was like last Wednesday, because I came back Tuesday night. I remember I took the flight Monday morning, and then I got back to Philly Friday, a Tuesday night. And so that was fun. But the lunch there was great. They have a really nice lunch menu program where it's very, you can pick certain items. The price bracket was popping, good food, really great ingredients, very good portions. I was very impressed with their lunch situation. And they just really had a really great spritz there that I remember. It was a very good, flavorful, like, I think it was like a type of cherry blossom type spritz or something like that. But it is like Lebanese food. So definitely those flavors is what inspires the cuisine, and it was very good. And they have a great dinner. They have a great tasting menu. They have a really great dinner program as well. But lunch was surprisingly good as well. Uh, I went to Townsend, in East Passyunk with my good friend Kelly. One of the Kellys. I have two good Kellys in my life, but I went to dinner with one of them, and we went to Townsend and had a really great, um, you know, really great menu. Um, French, very French, and we love we love French cuisine. I got to have duck. I got to have was it foie gras? I had some of that. Definitely had some great French red wine. The tasting menu is just a no brainer. You just restaurants like that, they have a la carte, but restaurants like Townsend, you just have to go in there. Townsend Wentz, who is the restaurateur of that incredible restaurant. Townsend owns, by the way, Outremer, which we talked about earlier this year. I went with the new restaurant. It's a seafood restaurant. It's a Italian seafood restaurant. That is incredible. And he also owns the new French restaurant Bistro. Not new. He took it over. Caribou Cafe. He owns Caribou Cafe, which is across. He also owns Il Mano, which is a really great Italian restaurant. And then he also owns this, this restaurant that I went to. He owns a lot of restaurants, doesn't he? But I want to be clear. I want to name this restaurant correctly, because his market is expanding. It's definitely expanding. His restaurant group is just epic. So he owns Oloroso. So he owns Townsend, which is in Passyunk, East Passyunk. That was, I believe, the first one. Then A Mano and the Outremer, which is in Rittenhouse. That's been doing well. The Italian seafood restaurant. Al Mano is just Italian. Townsend is French. And the Oloroso is a Spanish tapas spot that he also owns. And Oloroso is a very great restaurant, in my opinion, underrated. I feel like more people should talk about it. Go check it out. All these restaurants have great wine selections and a great wine menu. And I've just been falling in love. I think he has a smaller restaurant group. He has like 4 restaurants under his umbrella, but all 4 of them are really good, and undeniably exceptional. So just wanted to put some love over there for Townsend Wins and his incredible restaurant group. But Townsend, the original, is a great restaurant. If you're looking for a great date night, you looking to, spend a couple of cheddar, that's where you go. Because people are always asking, what is a cute, romantic, nice time, a good wine pairing, good time out, somewhere that she hasn't been to or he hasn't been to, a special somebody. I feel like Townsend is a great space to go if you're looking for something intimate and a great romantic, vibe. So I highly recommend Townsend. Harper's Garden, I went with Dr. Parks. Harper's Garden is a part of another great restaurant group, which is Avram who Hornick, who owns a lot of great restaurants. He has a restaurant group that is stellar. He has a lot of popular restaurants. I know so many people who have gone, and you've gone to these restaurants and you haven't even known, who owns it, who's a part of that group. Because so often, like Philadelphia, I tell people, Philadelphia is one of those places where you think that everything is quote unquote original, which they are original, but you'd be surprised that this is really a city that it has a lot of restaurant groups that dominate the box office. So this is FCM Hospitality, and they own so many of your favorite restaurants. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 restaurants that you know. So this is what FCM Hospitality owns. They own Liberty Point, which is in Old City, Morgan's Pier, Lola's Garden, Concourse Dance Bar, Craft Hall, Harper's Garden, Juno, Lucy's, Rosie's Taco Bar East, Parks on Tap, the Dolphin Tavern, Noche, and Walnut Garden. So if you've noticed a pattern with restaurant groups in Philly, each of them have their own type of theme or angle that they're trying to get to in the market. So for example, a restaurant group, Steven Starr. Steven Starr likes to do these very hyper themed restaurants that are like spectacle type restaurants, like the Disneyland of restaurants, and they're upscale and they're all throughout the city, right? So you know that Star owns Pod, Star owns Park, Budokan, a couple of other places, right? And these are like the Continental. These are like bigger, broader type of themes. You got Jose Garza's. What does he still own at this point? He owns everything he do is like mostly Spanish cuisine. Aladdin Flair, Buena Onda, right? He owns that. But he also has Whiskey Village that is not like that. That isn't Spanish based. It's more, middle America. So Whiskey Village, the Old Bar, Amada, he had a very big hold on the Spanish tapas. Tinto, which is no longer here, Volver, which is no longer here, Distrito, which is no longer here, but that was his theme. And then you have, Michael Scholston, he is not Steven Starr, but also has a type of, chokehold on restaurants. And I would say, I don't want to call him baby Steven Starr. I don't want to make that comparison, but he is definitely a more hipper version of that. Faster, more fast casual, not fast casual, more casual version of his restaurants, even though he has a very diverse mix, right? So his Alpen Rose, everything is like very high end on that front. So, it's very much so with that energy where he has Alpen Rose, he has Giuseppe and Sons, Barley's Independence Beer Garden. He's the casual king. He's the young millennial consumer theme. Like he's going for casual fine dining for millennials. That is how I look at it. Maybe a couple of Gen Zers can slide in there a little bit. Older Gen Z, but mostly he is the millennial casual fine dining answer. That's what I would say. Versus Steven Starr, he'll have older millennials and millennials with money, but he goes for Gen Xer and Boomer crowd. I would say that basically Michael Scholston's restaurants goes for young, new money fine dining. Steven Starr is a little bit older money fine dining restaurant group, if that makes sense. FCM Hospitality, and then Michael Solomonov, because we're going to talk about him in a minute. He has Cookin' Solo, right? Their restaurant group. Pretty much their group is the answer to Middle Eastern cuisine. Most of their restaurants and variations is focused on that type of Middle Eastern, Mediterranean, Levantine, Israeli type of flavors and cuisine. That is what they shoot for over there. So you got spots like Dizengoff, you have Kafar, Zahav, Laser Wolf, and a couple of new ones about to come to Philly very soon. That's the angle that they go for. And there's been a joke that people will say, a running joke for better or for worse, because he also owns Goldie, right? That pretty much all the restaurants are serving pretty much the same food, except they're just being branded differently, even though they're pretty much offering the same food. Now, as somebody who's been to all the restaurants, I disagree with that. But I can understand why people think that. It's not the same food. The quality varies based on the price point, that I will tell you. Same great ingredients, same fresh ingredients, but I will say that the price points, they get a lot more experimental. So Goldie, I would argue, Federal Donuts, but Federal Donuts isn't really a restaurant, but I would say if I look at Dizengoff, I look at Laser Wolf, if I look at Zahav, if I look at Goldie, right? Or Kafar. So Kafar is interesting. It's like a if I was to rank them on like the type of food, they're all kind of serving the same type of cuisine, but the level to which they put ingredients, the way the specialties, some of the recipes are more complex as you go. So I would say Goldie is the baseline, right? That's the most fast casual example. Dizengoff is a very it gets a little bit more elevated at that point. Laser Wolf is definitely a more experimental, higher level cuisine, but Zahav is the mother. Zahav is the highest you go in the cook's solo Samanov restaurant. Um, and I think that's one of the things that has been getting interesting. And that's the situation that's happening, that's a lot. So I always tell people that it's important, it's important that people know what's giving, what's happening, that some of the foods, some of the ways that they move is based off of chef level, right? Price point, ingredients, all of those things is very much explaining some stuff and putting it into context. And I think that's very important for a variety of reasons. So yeah, I would say that with those restaurant groups. But what's the most? But when I bring back to FCM Hospitality, they're a wild card as far as all of their taste, their interest. You have some people who really like the restaurants because of like one aspect or another. Like they're more outdoor. They are really based, I would say that they have the lock on outdoor dining. Most of the restaurants are very much outdoors, very much in gardens, very much, patio, outdoor dining. That's what I think FCM Hospitality does well. So Harper's Garden has a garden, it's big, parks on tap, craft hall, big outdoor spaces, big roofs, large communal eating. Rosie's Taco Bar has an outdoor patio. Liberty Point is like outdoors. Morgan's Pier, Juneau, like there's a garden, there's a patio, there's an embrace of nature and outdoors in addition to some indoor seating. And so Harper's Garden was definitely a fine mix of that. And, that was what was happening. That was what was happening or whatever. And that, that's what was happening. And, so, yeah, because, yeah, I think it's, this is, it's a lot there. I would say that I like the cuisine, I like the duck, I like the wine, I like, all of that. I loved the way in which they were very seasoned with their ingredients. There was a salmon dish that Dr. Parks loved. She loved her dish. Her dish was like this salmon, I can't even describe it, but it was like this salmon dish that they have. And that's what I love the most. I thought that dish was great. I had the duck. The duck was great. We had the swordfish, the cocktails, everything like that. And that was the thing that gets me, is the just level of pacing they did in a good way. Like I just love that nothing felt rushed. Everything was coming out at a nice pace in a space, and that was just good. Harper's Garden is what I would say, it's not like crazy fine dining. It's a perfect place that if you're looking for a cute fast date night with a boo, For my younger listeners who are like, I want to go somewhere that's not going to break the bank, but I still want something that's nice, good food, but also, cute, lax, because everything doesn't have to be suited and booted. That would be cute. Like for me, I can see myself and Mr. Johnson, you know, um, being like, hey, what you doing Friday night? What we doing on Thursday? We doing anything? No. Okay. Want to go to Harper's Garden for dinner? Like, that's that kind of thing for us. But for my brother, definitely a situation where I could see him, doing a cute first date or something. Because now he's single, as you all know, he's single, so he's out here mingling. I could imagine. But I can see him, doing a first date with someone there. I will give that. Um, and yeah, that was a thing for me. That's what made me, you know, appreciate it for that. So Harper's Garden definitely, was a big moment, for sure. And again, I highly recommend it. That would be my go-to spot. For those who's looking for something a little bit more light, a little bit more casual, because some of the places I'm going to describe, it gets a little up there. So I went to brunch at Dizengoff. I tried Dizengoff's new brunch, which is what I was just talking about cooking solo. Dizengoff's new brunch is great. That French toast, whatever that is, get that. It is like a chocolate French toast, but I've had nothing like it before. But the flavor on that thing is different. It's sweet. If you're like me, do the sharshuka. The sharshuka was with they have the Moroccan flavors and all of that with the egg. That was a really great dish to have with the hummus sampler. I would get the hummus sampler, the sharshuka, and that French toast to level out it. And they had a seasonal salad, like this tomato salad they had. I mean, tomatoes are perfect for the summer. I love a good tomato salad with feta in the summer. They had that on fleek. Their cocktails are really fun, very cute, very light. The limonada cocktail is just superb. They put all the different flavors. Love their brunch. Love that it's a contrast from a lot of the brunch spots that's out there right now. So a lot of brunch spots, is bad, eggs, bacon, waffles, whatever. I like Dizengoff brunch because it was like a different flavor. It was different. I haven't seen sharshuka in a minute. And so it was just good to have it from a place like Dizengoff, especially with the pita that they already make really well there. So, and then also to be able to have that complimentary with hummus, that whole vibe was memorable. And when I look at some of the brunch lists, I do definitely can see it being on that list because, with brunch can get real redundant. There's only so many chicken and waffles you can eat, so many omelets you can do. And to a certain point, you might want to shake it up a little bit. If you're somebody in that same position that I have felt recently, I just realized that like, wow, my brunch, a lot of the brunch places I'm going to, I do feel like, yeah, it's good, but I feel like I'm eating the same types of food. Dizengoff is a great alternative to that vibe. Like if you're like used to doing it, the standard American breakfast type of brunch energy, and you're like, I want some little bit of flavor and flair, something different, but still brunchy. I would recommend Dizengoff for sure. And the price point was really good as well. The price point was really good. So I had um, no hesitations, or whatever. I had no hesitations, or whatever, because, it's one of those things where, um, it's really hard to find spots on a Saturday, for brunch if you don't make a reservation. And I want to say that because people are back outside. People are back outside, and make a reservation, people. I went out and I saw somebody who I came into the space. Now I didn't know this person, but I came into the restaurant for brunch. But when I was coming in, somebody was seating me, and they had like a little attitude. Now, I don't get crunk in public spaces, but they were sitting down and they saw me come in and they saw me walking. And Becky was like huffing. And I was like, wait a minute, I don't know why you huffing because I made a reservation. It's not my fault that you decided to come to Rittenhouse on a bright and sunny Saturday and be mad that you have to wait, 20 minutes or something like that because people got seated before you. And I don't know what you thought this was, but the reservation been made over a week ago, baby. So don't even give me that energy. But I think of folks that go to restaurants and just, and I'm going to say that, um, and that's what it is. So, um, yeah, I'm gonna let some people be great, but let me just make it clear. Make sure you make your reservations. Check yourself. So last but not least, before I get into hot topics, I went to Providence. Now, you may have not heard of Providence because it just opened like about a week or so ago. Providence is a French seafood restaurant in Head House Square or Society Hill, if you're nasty. And it is where the old Ex Cochino restaurant, Ex Cochino, I forget what the name. It's over there by Bloomsday, Head House Square. Bloomsday's over there. There's an Argentinian Melback Steakhouse. For those who know that, Bloomsday is over there. Melbach Argentinian Steakhouse. I think it's a steakhouse. And it's really historical colonial area, cobblestones. That is Head House Square. That is Society Hill. It's over there deeper down South Street. Further down. That area. This restaurant is there. Now, let me tell y'all right now, this is fine dining. Like, this is fine dining. You always have seen on my Instagram me talk about this new restaurant. Nicholas Bizek is the chef. The best, one of the best dining experiences I've had this year. Definitely one of the best fine dining restaurants I've had thus far this year. It is definitely in the conversation with Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's definitely in the conversation with a lot of those types of higher end restaurants. It is $225 per person. If you want to do the main, room because you're seeing the chefs cook in person. It's about 26 courses, but they're small portion courses. It's all seafood. And then there's a interesting duck dish at the end, the duck breast at the end. But everything is 90% seafood. They do have some cocktails. No, they don't have cocktails. They don't have cocktails. It's wine, lots of wine. But they have what is called temperance beverages, which is basically non-alcoholic cocktails. So if you don't drink, there is some great non-alcoholic wine, non-alcoholic beer, I believe, and some other like mixed drinks, but they're non-alcoholic. So they do have that menu for people. But the menu is a course. You don't know what's on the menu at the moment. You just go through the motions. You gotta let it be known your allergies and things for that point. So, I went with Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson does not do scallops, does not do clams, and does not do mussels. Now, it's not that he has he's allergic per se, but he doesn't like the solid foods. But if there's like a stock or something that it contains it, he's okay with that. But he does not like eating scallops, clams, and mussels. Oysters he'll do, shrimp he'll do, caviar he'll do, everything else he'll do. But those are his 3 no-nos. Meanwhile, I had a scallop, tempura with Dr. Parks at Harper's Garden. That was fabulous. And it's funny because when we go out, now there have been times when we've done date nights and he will, I will go through, I will have look, I want some mussels and I will eat a whole bowl to myself. Yes, it is. I've had moments like that where I could not help myself. But then there's times where I can't do scallops like If it's like an appetizer dish, I'm like, okay, I don't want to just garf up, this mussels by myself. So sometimes I wouldn't eat it just because he's at the table. I'm mindful. That's how 10 years, okay? In the beginning, you'd be like, well, look, I'm going to do this. But then, as time progressed. Um, Clams, I'm not crazy about clams unless, there's a special pasta that I'm eating. Like if I'm eating an Italian pasta, like and there's a clam dish with it, I'll do that. But I mean, I'm not against clams, but it's not the thing I run to. But I love me some mussels in red sauce. Oh, I love me some mussels. Scallops, again, scallops, if they're there, I'll eat them. I'm not running the scallops compared to everything else I like in the seafood community. But other than that, he eats everything else. So they was able to make a great alternative dishes in some of those courses for him, and he was able to enjoy everything all the same. So I will say shout out to them for how they can adjust and adapt with their ingredients. But it is French seafood. The menu evolves, so it's really hard to really tell people get this dish or do whatever because they do mix it up. They do specials. Their dessert was incredible. Their wine selection was great. I mean, we went to the wine cellar for dessert. They took us down there with a bottle. They got us a nice bottle of champagne, and it was a great, even more romantic experience. And it was a lovely Saturday night dinner. It was very romantic, it was wonderful. And again, the price point is $250. I think it's like $225 per person for the main room. If you go to the back room, which is not as flashy but cute, it's about $190, like $200. So in other words, if you can get the main room, get the main room. But if you can't, still great time, still great experience. It's only like 22 seats in the restaurant, so it's small in scale. But the decor, the intimacy, the vibe is just, oh, you somewhere high end. You're somewhere phenomenal. And I had like the best seat at the restaurant. And we just had a really incredible dinner. And it's giving anniversary dinner. It's giving birthday dinner. It's giving engagement dinner. It's giving post-engagement dinner just because you want to make sure the person say yes. And you may not want to get too heavy, but who knows? It's giving Valentine's Day if you can get in, but that might be intense. But it's giving, I love you. I'm in love with you. It is not a place to go if you're unsure about the person. This is a place you go when because when that bill comes, it's going to be over $500 easily. I mean, we put in gratuity, everything else, that's going to be over a $500 check. So you want to make sure that when you're there, you with somebody that you really, unless that's what you do, because there's a lot of fuckboys out there that will just be like, yeah, I'm going to do all the things and still not be committed. Okay, if you got like that, by all means, be a dog. But for the rest of us who are in love, who will want to figure out what, how to spend, this is definitely for the lovers, for sure. Because if that's not what you're about or what you're trying to do, this ain't for you. This ain't for you. So I love Providence. Thought it was a great restaurant, a phenomenal restaurant, one of the best of the year thus far. And I haven't really said about a lot of places, but there have been some standouts. And remember, what's funny is all the standouts, if y'all recall, was in cities that was not in Philadelphia. So, I was in Chicago and I was, I went to a restaurant out there, all the way out there in Jersey. I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, wow, people were just like, oh, you've been showing a lot of love to the places that's not in Philly, like restaurants that's not in Philly, like Asbury Park. I was out there showing love to them. And you all mentioned that. A lot of you all was messaging me. Well, I have found a restaurant in Philly this year that has stunned me, and that's Provenance. Now, I hear, and this is why I also love fall, that there's about to be a lot of new restaurants coming to Philly this fall. Like the ones that we thought was going to come this summer, the ones we thought was coming in the spring. Oh no, baby, they didn't squeak their bells and whistles. They're ready for fall. So I do forecast, I'll just say this, I do forecast that I will fall in love with more new Philly restaurants this fall than I have for this entire year thus far. Because this year, I got to be honest, I have not been that impressed with a lot of the new restaurants that's come to Philly. Now, let me be very clear. You all notice that I've been spinning the block lately this summer and this spring with Philadelphia restaurants, where I've went to some places to check them out after 2 years or a year or whatever, right? And have fallen back in love with those restaurants. But the new restaurants that have come out this year thus far, and I'm not going to name names yet, but I just have not been like super like impressed. Like there hasn't really been anything new that's come out this year that has me like, yes. Either it's been a revival of something or just I have just been like, okay, it's okay. All right, it's been okay. Like nothing has really been like, oh my goodness, as far as new restaurants go. And I want to be very clear because there is a bar that I've been impressed with that's brand new. 48 Record Bar. Jamarcus loves that place, child. He loves that place. And we love it together. And that's been a really fun bar to check out. But just the new restaurants in Philly that's been coming out so far has just been very mid. Just in my opinion. I'm just gonna keep it 1,000 with y'all. They've been very mid this spring, and I've just been very like, but the rest, but I feel like the fall is gonna be on a come up. So shout out to Provenance for bringing us into this new restaurant season of fall. So just want to give them those props. So let's get into the big topics. What's been going on. I want to talk about the DNC. I've been banging my head, struggling to figure out how do I want to talk about the DNC because so many of you all watched it. I don't want to sound redundant on some points. And so in a way, I want to just only do highlights. So listen, some of y'all are going to DM me and say, well, what about this? Did you know about this? I was all in on the DNC. I had my spies out there, okay? There's some behind the scenes stuff I was hearing about that I won't say on this podcast, so there's no need to bring it up, I guess. But I know a lot that was going on with the DNC, behind the scenes, behind the curtains, behind the sheets, allegedly. But I heard some things. I know some things about DNC, so I was all in. So if you tell me, you didn't mention this, it's because I don't want this episode to be extremely long, and I don't want to regurgitate on certain things or talk about every little nitpick. So I want to talk about, I'm just letting y'all know, I'm focusing on major highlights that I think will have legs much after this past week. So like, for example, there are moments that happen during any show, award show, where in the moment, it's great, it's fun, it's cool, but no one's going to remember it like a year or two or so from now. So I don't want to harp on those things. I really want to focus on certain things that will have implications beyond just that night alone. And that's what this is about. So I'm going to be as brief as I can, but also as thorough as I can. Let's see how good I do. So let me just start with the overall basics about it. 29 million people, on average, at the peak, watched the DNC, the Democratic National Convention, 29 million. Now, this population is about roughly 360 million Americans. So that's less than 10% of Americans. But when you consider the fact that like 50% of Americans don't vote at the election, then you also turn around and you realize, okay, that's about 20% of the voting population. So then you're like, okay, that's a big damn number. This is higher than the RNC, the Republican National Convention, by a couple of millions. There were more people that listened to Vice President Kamala Harris's incredible speech than they listened to Trump's ramble during RNC a couple of months ago. So let's just be clear with that. I want to shout out Mignon Moore, the Black woman who was the chair of the DNC. For the past Democratic National Conventions, Black women have been leading them, and I knew one of the incredible Black women who was the previous chair of the DNC. She actually did, I believe, more than one DNC. And, I wanted to be, acknowledge her, for her work. But Mignon did her thing. She worked previously for the White House as a very top senior official for the White House a period of time. She's just incredible. And we don't talk about, you know, some of the people that do that work over the years. And I just am in awe. Leah Daughtry did the 2016, Black woman who did the 2016 Democratic National Convention. She had one previously, but now there's another Black woman who's done it. And I feel like the production, the execution, the vision for this DNC was full of joy, full of high energy, lots of passion. And she did that. So Mignon Moore, MINYON Moore, MOORE. Look her up. She's incredible. If you want to talk about why this DNC is the way it is, you got to cite your source. She is that person. She was the chair of this convention and she did a stellar job. So I wanted to make sure I say that. Now, let's go through some of these days because they were long, child. Let me just start by saying the DNC was long as hell. It went into the wee hours. That first night, I want to say, what was that? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Monday night went to like, midnight, 1 o'clock at night. It carried. But it did speed up a little bit as the days progressed. But it was just it was a long show. And I think part of that is because they wanted everybody in America to be able to be seated at home, to be able to get home to watch it. So a lot of the program did get a little bit late into the evening, and different coasts had different experiences. So the DNC got over and wrapped up around midnight on Monday for some. It was 10 o'clock for some. It was 11 for some. It was interesting. I think midnight, 9 o'clock on the West Coast. Where I was located, it was 11 o'clock. But and for the East Coast people, because my husband was watching it, we was texting when I was in Dallas the first night. I was like, oh my God, it's wrapping up at 11. And he was like, it's wrapping up at around midnight over here. And I realized the time zone difference. So all of that is important, timing wise. But yeah, so let's get into it. Day one, Hillary ate. I liked Hillary's speech. I felt like it was more giving and more, alluring and more imaginative and enthusiastic than I envisioned it to be. Because this was, if we would have voted correctly, if the electoral college, because the popular vote did vote for Hillary, but the electoral college would did its thug fizzle, right? Hillary would have been wrapping up the end of her 2-term presidency. And I thought about that when she was speaking, that this is the sunset of her political career in so many ways, and how in some ways she helped crack that ceiling, but Kamala is going to fully crack it and break in, and how she paved the way in her own experiences that has changed the way this DNC is processed and even how the party is shaped. And that loss, even though Biden won in 2020, we still feel that loss. That loss was a loss that shouldn't have happened. And a lot of people are still, we still feel it because we would have never had the Trump situation had Hillary would have lost. Had Hillary would have won, I mean. If she would have won, a lot of what we're dealing with right now with Trump wouldn't have happened. And she called it, and people did not listen. And so she is in many ways, her speaking, there's a level of conviction and credibility there that you just can't deny, because she's able to come. And I mean, the hair was laid. She looked good. I mean, her outfit, that Chanel, honey, she looked good. That pantsuit was popping. She just came to be like, okay, you remember when it was given very much. I mean, this wasn't what she was saying, but her whole energy was like looking at America like, okay, so, 8 years ago when I told you what I said what I had said, and you see what has happened. Now, don't fuck up. You need to make sure that this time we do it for a Black woman now. Because white women, y'all failed me. But we need to do it for her. And I need y'all to do it for her and be with her the way y'all were for me and then some. Because right now, given what we know about Trump, what I said initially was speculative. Now we know. And so we can't do this again. And so her whole presence was a sobering reminder to so many people about what, how to move. So I just found her speech inspiring. there's always going to be that love for Hillary, like people have for Jimmy Carter. Not comparing them, but just being like, there's always going to, like within certain factions of political parties, there's going to always be a certain like level of love that we're going to have for Hillary Clinton because of what happened. And that's never going to go away in this generation. We're going to evolve and love things, but there's going to always be a group that thinking about Hillary's election. There's going to always be that moment we're going to think about that or talk about that. It's going to be like remember when that happened? Like, we don't have that for John Kerry. Sorry, we just don't. I don't know people who are just like, oh my goodness, I'm just so hurt that John Kerry lost. Al Gore, we definitely have that for Al Gore. People to this day, there are people that's still mad about Al Gore losing because they felt like that he got cheated, allegedly. But there are people that still feel some type of way about what happened to Al Gore. Like, we ain't gonna ever forget the recount, But there are certain races where we don't feel that way. Like, John Kerry is just like, okay. Dukakis, like, okay. Like certain candidates just will never have that, like. But Hillary, we feel that because that election, Hillary, again, just like Al Gore had the popular vote. Hillary had the popular vote. The electoral count fucked around. So with this election, I just hope that we get both electoral count and popular vote count and that Kamala Harris gets what she needs. Now, at the end of that night, Biden spoke. At the beginning, I was just like, oh my goodness, he's making some major faux pas. Like, oh my goodness, when is this going to end? Initially, I did feel a little bit fatigued by him. And a little bit of that is because it was late. A little bit of it was because, his speech giving hasn't been the most dynamic or sharp, right? But then I had to take a moment and say to myself, this man has had an over 50-year career. And that's just undeniable. And I can't, I'm so grateful for his sacrifice that this is a white man that got out his own way. And he's done that in recent years. In many ways, I feel like he's atoning for some of the bullyish ways he had in the 90s, to be honest. I think he has got on the right side of history as his political career sunsets. So I give Biden that in a certain way. And I recognize, what? This is the last time. This is not the official last time, but this is going to be we are counting down the number, right? Like, this is one of the very last times that this man, will have the ability to give a speech like that. This is his last DNC. Well, let me not say that. This is his last DNC as a political leader. He will, he might make it in the next 4 years to go to DNC. I don't know, right? We don't know. The world don't know. In the next 4 years, will he be able to give a speech with the same, given what's going on? He's aging. I don't know. But what I felt in that moment was that this is all hitting him at once, that this is his last big crowd. And that in some ways, people in that room, they love him, right? They hype for him. They're excited about him. All the different feelings they have about him is real, right? But to a certain extent, you do feel two things at once. You feel this sense of, okay, let me be in the moment and remember him. And this is his last speech, major big speech he's going to give in his political career. And let's lock in that nostalgia. But then there is that part of, because he started as one of the first speakers of the night, okay, we're turning a different tide. The world is moving a little bit more faster forward, and it's time to move on. And Biden giving his speech the way he did and where he did during the DNC kind of showed that turning of the guard of people being like, okay, it's a different day. Okay, let's get this out the way, because Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, it's about moving forward. And so it did feel symbolically like, in some ways, they wrapped up the Biden chapter and is ready to move. And in some ways, politically, that's how it is, right? In certain ways, that's what America did. America was like, all right, Biden out, let's go. And in some ways, the way that Biden has handled it has been very gracious, I would say. He is graciously, because it's hard. I just, as somebody who's in an industry where most of my peers are much older than me, seeing older people let something go like that and pass the baton has never been as gracious I've seen in politics like this. Because it could have just been so much uglier. It could have been so much more contentious, and just way more messier. And I do feel like mainstream media keeps trying to stir the pot. Stop asking Nancy Pelosi about this. Respectfully. Like, just stop asking Nancy Pelosi about that. Like, it's clear that, if she writes a book or does an interview down the road. But right now, rehashing Biden's exit is just so counterproductive and a distraction to what needs to happen right now for November 5th, that I just feel like the folks that want to keep on digging into that is like, what the fuck? Like, one, I don't think the voters and the public care. And that's what annoys me sometimes in journalism, is like, sometimes I'm like, what are we doing this for? Is this really to be a public service, to educate and inform and provide people information that really do? Are we just spilling out a bunch of just information and details that we know will create harm and chaos or distraction that does nothing to move anything forward? So sometimes I wrestle with the nature of some reporters and some of the journalism that I see, where I'm not saying that details and things don't matter and you can't spill something. I get some of that. But sometimes the way that there is an over-indexing of mess that sometimes overshadow critical, important details and information in politics, that's what annoys me. Where there's people like, well, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, cool, but why do we give a fuck? Like, because the reality is, we know media literacy in this country is bleak. And so my job personally is that I would rather zero in on some really important things rather than get people lost in the sauce, because people don't know how to differentiate between what's pertinent news and what's irrelevant news. And if everything's being highlighted like it's breaking news and super important, that's part of the problem, because everything isn't breaking news and everything isn't top news. Some of this shit y'all just need to just chill out on, right? But when you treat journalism like a commercial business rather than public service that should be. Anyway, I digress. It's just, that grinds my gears. But I think Biden, gave his swan song, and I could appreciate that. So with day 2, the Obamas ate. Day 2 was about the Obamas. I know there was other speakers and there was other stuff. I don't even remember all that, but I remember the Obamas. Michelle Obama, Barack Obama, in that order. Okay. Look, at this point, people have all their thoughts about the Obamas in very much ways. But let me just say, for the record, they still got it. They are still America's favorite couple when it comes to this political power couple game. The way that they have just been unified as a couple, they understand each other, they know what each other's purposes serve. And I'm just in awe of Michelle Obama, how that she has become such a very important, pivotal figure of the Democratic Party, that she is one of their biggest lethal assets compared to Obama. Like, Obama serves a purpose. I feel like he is America's universally beloved president at this point. Like, we all love Obama. And even those who say they don't like him, child, your life was really good with him. And if he could do a third term, he's one of the few that I can say, if Obama ran a third term, yeah, Obama will get it. Like, everybody was doing, people can admit, I don't care what you progressives want to say, y'all want to check, blah, blah, blah. Everybody was doing a lot better under the Obama administration than anything. Americans, come on. I feel like we all want to go back to the Obama 8 years over any of these years, right? I mean, look, Biden is doing what he can. Trump was full of shit. But to be honest, the Obama era was a good era for a lot of people. A lot of people can't sit up and act like, listen, Obamacare alone, okay, did wonders for people in healthcare. Like the level of even the way that people are jumpstarting, the way we talk about healthcare affordability. The Obama had Obama checks too. Y'all forgot them Obama checks because I remember them. Stimulus, remember the stimulus? Okay, the original. Y'all talking about these Donald Trump checks. Obama had stimulus checks. Stop playing. Okay. And we Obama did a lot. And I just know my life during those 8 years. That was my upbringing from transition from college, from high school to college to adulthood, like all of that. My entry into adulthood and just my college experience was shaped by those Obama years. So I'm forever, that was a moment. I guess that is what my parents would have thought about with the Clinton era. Some people, right? That for middle class folks like my parents and others and my family, I think they they love the Clinton era. Like, Clinton definitely policy wise was not as progressive as Obama, but economics wise, he was great. There was a moment. So I feel like that's how Obama feels. And so when you see Obama, you see Michelle, there for people of my generation and definitely the Gen Xers, there is a sense of a feel-good feeling. You remember how you felt. And so every time they come on the screen, I get a smile. I'm like, okay, I like these people. Like, I remember them. I love them. Like, I just feel good because I remember where I was when they were in leadership. And so as much as people would like to critique Obama and how his politics are now and some of the moderate tone of him, this is a guy who achieved what many considered the impossible. And here he comes now trying to make the impossible happen again. So I got to give credit where credit's due with that. And, as much as we can critique them, you just got to sometimes say that when it comes to this modern American political world, an Obama administration was a lot better than a lot of administrations that we've given more grace to, I would just argue. Okay. But yes, so let me start with Obama's speech, the former president. Speech was great. I mean, Obama was in rare form. I mean, his size jokes on Trump, his conversation about hope, his reflection on, again, always trying to find the good in people, was a necessary speech, a measured speech, and the kind of speech that, a former president just with that kind of swagger can give. Now, Michelle Obama. This is like the movie Fences, and I reference this all the time sometimes. If you all have seen Fences, the film with Viola Davis and Denzel Washington, both of them won Tony Awards for their performances when they was on Broadway. When it got to the Academy Awards, Denzel Washington was nominated for Best Actor. I personally felt like he should have won, but that Casey Affleck, Ben Affleck's brother, who's a hot ass mess of a brother, who won for Manchester by the Sea, which I felt like was overrated. But anyway, Denzel was was the next, would have been I think the person that would have won his third Oscar, had he, But Viola Davis won the Oscar for her performance. And a lot of people will say that she bodied Denzel in that film. She was the star. She took she was the tour de force in that film. And Viola Davis is an incredible actress, but to be alongside the Denzel Washington in the film. Denzel was great in that film. Viola Davis ate in that film, and she bodied. That is how I felt about Michelle Obama and Barack Obama that night. That Obama gives another incredible speech, a great performance, but Michelle bodies. And I was trying to figure out for a long time, why was Michelle bodying the way that she do? And it goes into position. It's about the positionality of how they operate. Because if you don't understand that context, then you miss the plot. Barack Obama will never give this kind of speeches that we love from Michelle because he's a former president. And there is a certain way that past presidents have to talk about the country, They have to talk about their experiences and how they are expected to lay a foundation of a level of self-discipline that they want exhibited by their predecessor, in this case, Kamala Harris. So the type of ways, rhetoric, the ways in which Michelle talks, right? The former president could never speak like that, especially at the Democratic National Convention, especially given his role, his title, the way in which he focuses and talks. He has to talk in a different way. I'm not talking about like vocal style and delivery and presentation. I'm talking about like just messaging has to be very different. What I think is interesting about Michelle Obama, the reason why her speech is so different, is because one, she is the American dream, but she's also the American dream that have had trappings that can be relatable to women, but be related to people who are not there. This is a woman that is very educated, definitely pulled herself up by the bootstraps in that type of mindset. She is the American dream, but because of her role as a Black woman, in her role, she's experienced racism at a higher profile level that the whole nation saw. The whole nation saw Donald Trump consistently attack her husband and her family. And just seeing the Republican Party and the disrespect and the things, right? And she, in many ways, have had to hold a level of poise and respectability because of that. And not because she had a special, powerful title as president, but simply because of the fact that she was married to the president. And she is the only Black woman, right, that's interesting enough, that has been in the White House, has had to live through all of the politics, but does not have the same decision-making power. So the other person that can say this is Kamala Harris, but she is the vice president of the United States, so she holds a seat. But Michelle Obama is the only person of color to be in the White House at that level that does not have any actual political power, but yet still has to experience all the things, but can also talk in a way that is not entrapped by that role. And so because Michelle has the credibility to speak on the politics, because she was in that room, she also has the freedom to express things and say things about Donald Trump in a certain type of way that Obama can't. She can talk about race in America and those unique experiences as a Black woman in ways that Obama can't and Kamala can't because of her identity, right? She's not biracial. She's not somebody who has political aspirations either. She actually hates politics. And when people say, oh, Michelle should be the next president, the reality is, as much as you love her, I love her even more because she knows that if she was actually interested in politics, she could not be this frank. That America would not vote for a Black woman like her the way that she talks about politics. And that's even why we love her, because she's not political, but yet can speak to politics in a way that is not chained. Her thoughts are so unfiltered and yet beautiful and poignant because she still has the optimism because of the fact that she literally is the partner of the one of the biggest manufacturers of political hope we have seen in this generation. But she also can be frank about the hurt and the racism in a way that a president like Obama will never be able to exhibit that kind of vulnerability because presidents are expected to always exuberant strength. And so there is a nuance there that hearing both of their speeches, I felt a full totality of how much this election matters to them and how it impacts their vision and their politics and everything else. So I just wanted to name that. And to me, it's not who's better, but what makes them work as a unit and why they were a diabolical group. And what I thought was important was how they both spoke the same night and how they both spoke in Chicago and how Michelle had just lost her mother months ago and how Obama lost his mother-in-law and how much he loved that woman, right? That also shaped how they looked at this future in this country. So that was just, that took it from me. That just took it from me Because if you notice, Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, their speeches were spread out. And for very good measure, because also, again, Michelle sees the White House a lot different than Hillary, because Hillary had aspirations. Michelle does not have aspirations. And so even the way that Hillary Clinton gave her speech could not be the same way that Michelle gave hers, because Michelle was not a Secretary of State. She's not a dignitary that has to exuberate this type of Democratic Party energy. Michelle gets that leisure to say, I've been in the room with all these people, and I also know politics, and I was a respected lawyer, and I also know the law, and I also know what was going on, and I got some opinions. And she could give those opinions more freely because none of her roles were designated in the elected appointed sense. So that's what made it beautiful, right? Now, I do want to go back a little bit, and I want to say that one thing that stood out to me about Monday was AOC's speech. And AOC, because of AOC's positioning, that's why AOC's speech was very different. But I thought that was just a beautiful thing to observe. Now, Wednesday, the VP candidates, which for me was like, was it a couple of them was speaking, not that they were bad. I just kind of was like, okay, got it, I'll get the, not VP candidates, but the VP hopefuls, like Josh Shapiro's speech, which some of y'all didn't get the joke. I get it. Great gowns, beautiful gowns. That is from Aretha Franklin, when the late, great Aretha Franklin, many, many years ago, when they asked her about naming some celebrities. And that was who she referred to as Taylor Swift. So they asked her give opinions about artists. And so I remember they asked about Alicia Keys, and she said good singer. Adele, she said great singer, very good singer, very great voice. And then they said Taylor Swift, and she said great gowns, beautiful gowns, And basically she was like, I'm not even going to talk about the vocals, because let's be real, Taylor Swift can't sing. Okay, Taylor Swift is a cool performer. She's fun. She writes great songs, but Taylor Swift is no vocalist. Like, no one's like, anybody who thinks she can sing is just, and I don't think Taylor Swift wants to sing. She's a performer, she's a pop artist, she's a recording artist, but she's not a great singer. Like, no one's like, oh my God, did you see how Taylor, no one's saying that. So we don't even need to pretend that Taylor Swift can sing or that there's vocals there. Like, that's just not what she do. So even asking her about Taylor Swift, Aretha about Taylor Swift, was not even a fair question to ask. And that's why she just kept it nice and said, well, great gowns. And Taylor Swift does wear great gowns, beautiful gowns. Then they asked about Nicki Minaj, and she just said, well, we're just going to leave that alone. So if you thought the shade towards Taylor Swift was heavy, the real shade was at Nicki, when she just turned around and was just like, well, we're just going to leave. She was like, I'm not even going to speak on that. But again, Nicki Minaj can't sing. Like, she's a rapper. She can't sing. So I don't even know why that guy asked about them too. That just, to me, was just like, you're being petty. But that's how I felt about Josh Shapiro. It was a great suit, a wonderful suit. It was. Josh Shapiro's suit was nice. That speech, the Obama impersonations, which I've been talking about this for months, way before mainstream America jumped on it. But, Josh Shapiro, I don't know. I just feel like he's got to find his identity these next couple years. I feel like this national attention has been good for him in some regard, but it also has echoed some interesting concerns about just who this man is and what's next for him. And I definitely think Josh Shapiro needs to really take some time to figure out who he is, because I feel like the whole Obama-esque attempts, now that people have clocked it, it's like, okay, you need to try to be something else, or at least figure yourself out in a different way, or just the rebrand needs to be different. He's a great politician. I won't say that Josh Shapiro does not know how to do politics, but for better, for worse in some cases, but he just needs to figure out his identity, because I feel like the whole Obama sounds like Obama thing is going to get played out really fast, and it's going to end up being a running joke. And it's just, versus like Wes Moore, That's a governor right there. I love me some Wes Moore. Like Wes Moore is a black man who is a governor who does hold political power, but it's obvious he is carving out his own flavor, his own identity that is definitely not Obama, and that's okay. Like we can see different black men, and you can look at black men, and every black man don't have to be Obama. Like that's the other thing. We got to give people different flair, and I just love his style. Reverend Warnock, again, I'm going back a little bit, but I want to say Reverend Warnock, another alpha man. Wes Moore's an alpha as well. Reverend Warnock's, I will give him props that his sermon that he gave, we should have passed the plate for him because I did like that. Yeah, but Josh Shapiro's speech was like, okay, the roll call was definitely a standout. I just want to shout that out. I did enjoy the roll call. The roll call was popping. Props out to the roll call people. They did their big one with that. What else? Oprah ate. Okay, and I know y'all was shocked that Oprah was an independent, but baby, she's a billionaire, so let's not act like we too shocked. She always gonna keep her eyes on the bank to some degree. But the fact that Oprah came out, and Oprah, ain't came out really since Obama, because she didn't really come out in 2016 for Hillary like that. The last time she really has shown out was really for Obama. So for her to come out like that and speak at the DNC and to endorse Kamala, one, was beautiful, but two, just shows you how much it's important for certain people who have these major platforms to show up. There's been a lot of critique about the role of celebrities at DNC, but see, y'all wasn't saying all that when the RNC had Amber Rose and had all these other, Kid Rock and Hulk Hogan. Y'all wasn't telling to lay off the celebrities when they do it, but when the Democrats do it, everybody want to act like it's the first time. Y'all just mad that they had better celebrities. Y'all just mad that Lil Jon came out. Y'all just mad that Kerry Washington and her boo, Tony Goldwyn, Scandal, the castmates, they're castmates. They're not boos. They're both separately married women, men and women. Okay. But still, y'all know what they were doing. They were planning for the ratings. I think they're very happy in their marriages individually, but let's be real. They like to play in our face. They know that the Fitz Olivia thing is just going to live with us. And they did their thing. But like, let's be real. We know that even though celebrities don't hold all the power, it's nice to have familiar faces put on a good fucking program. Okay. Eva Longoria out there. It's nice to have, some fun faces, familiar faces supporting candidates. Like, get over yourselves. Like, let's be for real. But Tim Walz, that speech on Wednesday night, his family, Gus, let's talk about it. The wife, Gwen, the whole family, Hope, like, I get my life. I get my life. I get my entire life from them. A great family. And that speech and that energy, like I was putting my finger on it. Tim Walz is that, and I went viral on Twitter about this. I went viral a lot this week about the DNC, but Tim Walz, what makes him special is he's that white guy. See, this is what I tell white people. Be more Tim Walz and less who? Who is cringy out here? I mean, be more like Tim Walz and less like, Helen Gim. But Helen Gim's not white. But like, less like, oh my goodness. I'm just thinking like who? Because I don't want to, I'm going to be thoughtful about how I critique. But like, ooh, I'm trying to pick my words. There's some cringy white people, white progressives. I will say that I would like, you know what? That's what I'll say. I'll say I would like more people to be like Tim Walz than be like Josh Shapiro. Meaning, I want white folks to just be aware, right, of themselves. Like, be white, be you. Don't try to emulate and try to, relate in a certain way. Like, even with my pop artists, there's a reason why people like Taylor Swift over Katy Perry. Because Katy Perry culturally appropriates, right? Like, there's a reason why we like Miley Cyrus right now than we care for her Bangers era, even though she has some hits, but why she was a little bit more problematic in that Bangers era. Because we want, like, I want my white folks to know they white, know their privilege, and just be a white person and not try to spend your time trying to relate and make everything as universal. Because in doing that, you can be trying to look like you're trying too hard, but then you also miss the responsibility to be more educated on how to use your white privilege to do right. I feel like there's an era of like white liberals that spend too much time trying to be quote unquote relatable to black and brown people, how they talk, how they are very much more performative, how they like to be so much symbolic and wear certain things and make all this. But I like white folks that, like, look, they know they're white. They are who they are, right? But they also recognize how to show up and say, look, I'm not trying to relate and I'm not trying to pretend that I understand these things like you, but I know when something's wrong and I'm going to call it out and I'm going to be my full self and I'm not trying to change it up. Like, there's Rachel Dolezal's, right? Rachel Dolezal's a white woman who just felt like she was entitled to black spaces and then thought she was black because of that. Like, no, don't, in a world of Rachel Dolezal's, and I would even say Sean King's based on the birth certificate, don't be that person. Be yourself and acknowledge who you are and acknowledge your differences and recognize that you can be different and you can be, but you can also do the right thing, and that doing the right thing will be more universally good than trying to be the pandering white person. And so with Tim Walz, when I heard him speak, and this is a white man, y'all, this is a very regular, degular white guy. And does he know some black people? I believe he do, right? But you can tell that this is just a white man, right? From the Midwest. But the way that he understands these issues, the way that he understands racism, the way that he understands, like, look, all the issues that happen to small town America to white folks, that is real. But also, we're not going to act like black people don't go through shit. And we're not going to act like we cannot step up and help them and also not be racist and other things. I just feel like his flavor, his whole awareness, I prefer that. Like, that's my kind of white person. Like, you ain't trying to pretend to be anything you're not. You're not trying to pander, but you understand and you get it. And I feel like Tim Walz gets it. And I understand why she picked him even more, because she doesn't need somebody that is super political, super strategic, super, target demographic, talks one way in one room, changed up another. Like Jeff Brown type of white people. Like, I'm being frank, right? Like, when I think about Jeff Brown and how he carried on during the race, it's giving white savior, it's giving the blind side. We don't need that. We're past that era. Like, we just don't need those type of white folks, because they eventually are doing it for show. And when the spotlight's not on them, when they're not the center of attention, they typically flare up, and then the white privilege shows, and then the Karen jumps out. Tim Walz is just not that person. And that's what I can respect about him. And that's what I really like about him. And I just found that to be very just refreshing overall. His whole swagger on that just really impresses me. And his speech is just heartfelt. And he just reminds me, like, when I grew up in Texas, like, I had a white teacher in high school. I had a couple of white male teachers, actually. But what I remember about those teachers is that the school I went to was predominantly black and brown. Like, there was barely any white people. We had more white teachers than white students in my school. What I appreciate about the white male teacher I'm thinking about in particular was that he was just somebody like he white, he was a Texas guy, but the way that he treated us with dignity and respect and compassion, and just treated us like people, and really, and I'm not saying he was colorblind. He definitely clearly wasn't colorblind, because he understood what school he was at. But he just was somebody who was not trying too hard, but just was a decent person, respectful, transparent, and compassionate. And because of that, I found him to be more relatable, more accessible, because he just was a good damn person. And he just wasn't trying to be phony and be fake or try too hard and do all that. He just was himself. And he was still nice. See, the issue I think that some white people struggle with is that they either could be so white and aloof and not aware, and then they feel like they have to be hyper aware and also hyper performative. You can be your full white self and be yourself and not understand something. And you know what? I can appreciate a person says, look, I don't understand that joke. Or, I'm just a child, I don't know, right? And that's okay, right? And you can also at the same time be respectful, be considerate, read the room, understand, okay, this isn't about me right now, decentering themselves. You can do all of that too and still not have to perform and be super, super quote unquote conscious in the culture, right? So he just represents a certain white person that is the same white person that voted for Obama, that was able to go, you know what? I don't understand some of the reasons why Obama is beloved by a certain demographic of people. I don't understand it. That's okay. But you know what? I like what he got to say about policies. I think this man really means well for the country. Who cares if his name is Barack Hussein Obama? Who cares if he got big ears? Who cares that he's black? Like, I don't care about that shit. This is a good dude that means well, and I'm going to vote for him. And that's how Obama was able to get a certain higher level of white educated white men to vote for him, how he was able to pull from working class white folks to vote for him, and how he was able to pull from pockets, because in many ways they was able to look at him and just come with that. And I think Tim Walz has that kind of like, yes, I know these other issues go on in the world, but I'm also going to just do my part to be better and more inclusive. And I think he just compliments Kamala very well. So I'll say that. So on day 4, Doug, of course, on day 3, Doug gave his speech. It was a cute speech. It was cute. Not a bad speech. It was cute. Day 4 was the final day. The family, everybody talking about Maya Harris, who is married to Tony West, who is Kamala Harris's, of course, her brother-in-law. Maya is a beautiful woman, 57 years old, younger than Kamala by 2 years. She had a baby at 17. And so Maya's daughter, a lot of you all thought that was Kamala's sister, but that's actually her niece. And so, that's the context there. Her daughter, her sister, Kamala's sister Maya, that's that sister. She is clearly the Solange of that family. She is just the one who clearly keeps it spicy and adorable, and their sisterhood is just beautiful. And so her speech was just very touching, and the nieces and the great nieces I just loved all of the lovely, ness, like Kamala's grandnieces speaking and pronouncing her name to the audience and all of that. It was just a beautiful family, speeches. D.L. Hughley spoke, and D.L. Hughley is just an interesting guy. People kept wondering, why did he give a speech, given how controversial he is in certain ways? I think it was important for him to give his speech because he represents a lot of black men in certain pockets, not all, but he represents a pocket of black men that were very highly critical of Kamala without doing their research. A lot of us had thoughts about Kamala. I definitely was more critical of her during the 2020 election because I didn't know much about her, and a lot of people didn't, right? But he definitely went ham in certain ways. And when he got up there, he openly apologized. Just as loud as he was critical, he was as honest about how he didn't do his research and how Kamala pulled him aside and said, you need to do your research when she invited him over to her house a couple years ago. And so he came there very, sober and very clear about who she was and why he supported her. And he spoke to a demographic of black men around his age, some men who definitely was quick to jump into the misogyny noir around her in certain kind of ways. And so I understood his purpose. I know a lot of people felt like what a waste of space to a certain degree, but I could acknowledge his purpose in that regard. Now, to Kamala's speech, because I think that's the big one. I thought it was an incredible speech. It was probably one of the best DNC candidate speeches I've ever heard. What was beautiful about that speech was that it was meaty, but there was a brevity and briefness to it that I appreciated. I think that she did everything she was supposed to do in that speech. That speech, and when I try to tell people, and this is what annoys me sometimes when progressives listen to it, she's got to give a speech to 29 million people. A lot of those people, those Americans and people watching, right, they are people who are on various spectrums of the political aisle. The way that she was able to articulate the Democratic agenda and focus was beautiful, because it was measured where, she had to consider all the different optics. And I think that she was able to do all of that, given that she really had to write this speech and have this speech done in three weeks. I'm just impressed. In the history books, when she wins, because I'm optimistic, right? The way in which the Democratic Party pivoted that quickly and that seamlessly to get Kamala in this role, and the way that she has taken all this energy. Because imagine how it felt. I believe that January 1st of this year, on her bingo card, she was like, I just want to get reelected as vice president. I can't wait. I don't think she would have imagined, or this country would imagine, that where we would be right now in this moment. People would wanted it to happen, but whoever thought that this pivot so fast in the game would lead to this major facelift for her? Now, let me say this. Shout out to Big Gretch. I just want to shout out Gretchen Wiener, the governor of Michigan, who gave another great speech. Shout out to Big Gretch, okay? And that's a real thing. Big Gretch is a thing. Big Gretch is a thing. And if you don't know about it, Google it. I got family in Michigan, and especially in Detroit, where I have to call some people and just be like, can y'all explain Gretchen Wiener? They said to me, my friend, my cousin actually was very shady, said, it's who y'all think Josh Shapiro is in Pennsylvania. I said, well, then I know you a lie. But I think that what we think about the way that Josh wants to be reveled, I think Josh wants the swag of Wes Moore and Gretchen Whitmer. I think Gretchen Whitmer and Wes Moore are the governors that Shapiro thinks he is in Pennsylvania. Now, let me be very clear. Josh Shapiro is very popular in Pennsylvania, but he don't have that kind of swag that Wes Moore in Maryland has and Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan. Like, we black folks don't cut up for Shapiro like they do for Big Gretch and Wes Moore. It's something about a woman and black folks. Like, we just got it, that kind of swag. Josh Shapiro is a white man, baby. And that's okay, right? Because like I said, y'all know Coach Walsh is over there, in the Midwest doing his thing, right? But Shapiro wants to have that kind of swagger. He just don't have it. Them TikTok videos don't be hidden. Some of them are funny, but he just don't have it like that. So I just feel like, just shout out to Big Gretch. I just wanted to say that because that's just a different type of swagger. And my family, I'm like, you know what? If Big Gretch came to Pennsylvania, they ain't even elect a woman governor yet. But if we had one, could you imagine the kind of fun? Like, we would just have fun. Shapiro's fun, but like, he's boring to me, y'all. He just don't have that kind of flag. I think he wants it though. But Wes Moore and Big Gretch, they just got it for the Democratic Party. They just got that flavor. But nonetheless, Kamala's speech just hit all the chords. She addressed some very tough stuff. She had a very promising optimism that, and a level of patriotism that she had to give, that to some cases people were like, ooh, biting their nails. But she just hit all the points. She did it in a way that, again, she just hit her bases. Like, I just was it's like listening to a song and you want to hear certain notes and you want to hear certain melodies and you want to hear certain inflections. And that's just what she did. Like, listen to her speech. I've listened to it like 5 times, y'all. I kid you not. I just really studied it. And everything she did and how she did it, I just was like, yes. Whoever was the speech writer, whoever helped with it, you all did it. Because, again, this speech was not just for Democrats. This speech was just not for progressives. This speech was not just for liberals. This speech was for America. And the fact that she was able to offer a level of optimism, promise, hope, for the way that she was able to convey that and still keep it Democratic centric but also found a way to expand it and redefine it for a very divided country. Outstanding. Outstanding. I'm sorry. I just don't have any critiques, right? Because to critique it and say, she should have said it stronger on this point, I have to then concede and say, I know why she didn't go that direction. I know why she started with this and finished with that. I know why she said this and why she was measured and how she said something. They say, why can't you say genocide? Do you think that the vice president of the United States, who is now running for president of the United States, is going to call this a genocide? Now, whether or not people politically believe that is what it is, right? In their own politics, you're not the vice president of the United States. You're not the president trying to be the next president of the United States. The president of the United States will not call a foreign ally, right, that is in this current conflict. They will not say they're committing an act of genocide, because to do so means to pull out the Geneva Convention and lead to another. If they accuse Israel out loud of genocide, verbatim, then that creates a very different tone and tenor on the U.S.'s foreign policy and position. I'm not saying right now whether I agree or disagree with any of that. I'm saying that understand what it means for a sitting vice president that's running for president to call a genocide. That changes the entire foreign policy. And I believe the United States does not want to change their foreign policy quite yet when it comes to their relationship with Israel. I think that she's measured in saying that, okay, I definitely there needs to be some changes and some stops. She's not going to lay out the game plan to everybody. I get that. But it's obvious that this is on her mind and on her conscience. And I do think that I'll give her some space for that, because I recognize that if she was to call it a genocide, if she was to use that verbatim, you will hear certain people ready to call her anti-Semitic, ready to say she's a lot of things, pro-terrorist, pro-Hamas. You know they would do it. And because she's a black woman and because she's South Asian, you know that the level of critique that will be given to her is going to be much higher than what it would have been on Biden. So you got to recognize the role that identity plays right now in this campaign and how that would put a different target on her back. But I do believe that she is very concerned about the issue in Gaza, the crisis in Gaza. And I think that she will be the better candidate to address it than Donald Trump, who said that he will just pretty much let Israel do whatever. And I don't think Kamala Harris is going to just let Bibi Netanyahu do whatever if she's president. And so I think that's why she can't say it like that, because they're still currently in negotiations, right? So there's a lot of reasons why she can't go as hard. And I can acknowledge and respect why she did not do that. Which is why, if I was to say in certain aspects of that speech, she could have said this, she could have did this, I understand why she didn't. But what I thought was beautiful about the DNC is that across the board, other surrogates said the things out loud that she per se couldn't say. Like her sister, right? Like Oprah, like Michelle Obama. Like there were other people that could speak to some of those issues. And that let me know how I felt about that speech. Now, my overall thoughts, right? Doug's Emhoff's, the second gentleman's ex-wife, showed up and showed love and showed out for Kamala and for this country. And let me just say that we all know that somebody's wife, Melania Trump, right, didn't even give a speech at the DNC. The fact that the ex-wife of Doug can show up and show out for them at the DNC, and Doug could give a tender speech about his wife, and the fact that on the other side, we didn't see that be the same case for Trump and Melania. Let me be very clear. I don't think she's being held hostage, because y'all like to do that with these people, act like they don't know what's going on. No, I think she's very complicit on purpose. But at the same time, I think she's only doing the bare minimum because she don't care that much either. But let me be very clear. She's very much seeks to be where she's at. But also, I think there's a level of love lost. But she's still going to ride it, because, I mean, what else can she do right now, to be honest? But I noted that. I also want to say that the Democratic Party definitely showed they have a big bench of potential talent. That made me feel good. It felt really good to see. It felt really good to see everybody, across the board, that there is some very great potential presidential candidates in, hopefully, in my opinion, hopefully in 2032. People keep talking 2028. Like, why y'all doing that? Like, if Kamala wins this race, she better get 2 terms, in my opinion. We ain't gonna, let's not play. She's not Biden. So I do see some great candidates that could be the next president in 8 years. Y'all got to remember that, Obama gave his speech in 2004. John Kerry lost, and that's why he had his chance. But if we hoping to see what we see, then we got to recognize that the next slate of presidential candidates will be in 2032, not 2028. Let me just get that clear. But I love that a lot can change in 8 years, right? AOC is giving great promise. Who's to say that AOC may not be a vice presidential running mate for somebody one day before she eventually aspire to be president? Who's to say that Wes Moore or Gretchen can't follow up next? They giving promise. Some people say Josh Shapiro might be already working himself up for the next 8 years, but we have a nice strong bench of people that we can look up to and see for the future. And that's very promising, because I believe in 8 years, I believe in the next 8 years or so, Josh Shapiro will be around Kamala's age right now, which is fairly good for a position like that, right? Same thing with Gretchen Whitmer. She might be like 61, but that's not at all old, Wes Moore will be 53 in 8 years, or 54 around that time. He's a Libra, October 15th. His birthday is the day before Kamala Harris, who's another Libra, who, her birthday is October 16th. His is October 15th. And they're AKAs and alphas, you know what I'm saying? So, I'm sorry, Kamala Harris' birthday is on October 20th. So she is a Libra. Her birthday is October 20th. Wes Moore is on the 15th. Interesting enough, my birthday is the 12th. His birthday is the day after Usher's. Usher's birthday is on October 14th, and Wes Moore's on 15th. I mean, the Libras are just taking it. This is the year of the Libra, to be honest. This is the year of the Libra. But I started to say that he'll be like 53 in 8 years. So very, very, very young, still young at that point. He's 45 now. Josh Shapiro will be around 59. He's a Gemini, which is a lot. But he'll be, he'll be at that age where, Gretchen Whitmer again is like around 53. She just turned 54 or something like that. So she'll be around 62, 61. So there is a lot there. She's 53, so she'll be 61 in 8 years. So a lot of them will still be fairly youngish and eligible to run for president. They're in that stage. So yeah, I'm optimistic about the bench of the bench we have. We have Pete Buttigieg. We'll see how he fares out down the road, but there is a lot of opportunity that I feel like if this election works out, 8 years will not be too bad, but we'll see. Like Pete Buttigieg is 42. So, he'll be, 50 by then. So there's a lot of promise. There's a nice generational bench that we can look at with optimism and hope. AOC, definitely, I can see her being a VP candidate with somebody down the road, for sure. Because I mean, when you look at, her age, she's 34. So, and she's also a Libra. Her birthday is October 13th, the day after my birthday. So again, Libras, like it's our year. Libras are shiny right now. So she'll be 35 this year. She'll be 43 in 8 years, which, 43 would be a nice age for a VP. I could see her being a VP in 8 years. She'll be like 43, 42. So she'll, have plenty of time. And so I'm very optimistic about, you know, the future of the Democratic Party. I think the Republican Party, if Trump loses, they're going to have to do a major cultural reset across the board, in my opinion. They're going to have to really figure it out, navigate it, and figure out what they're trying to do. So, yeah, you know. Other things about the DNC that I liked, overall, I just felt like it was a lot of high energy. There's this wonderful young kid, 12-year-old. His name is Noah, Knowa. He's really big on Twitter. He's on TikTok, apparently. He's a social media star, young black kid, 12 years old, so adorable. And he talks politics, and he's spicy. He's fun. And he was just a lightning rod at the DNC, just everywhere, and doing interviews, having his moments. And he was just fun and cool, so smart, and just reminds me slightly of myself, like when I was young and just smart. Like he reminds me of my little brother who's like 14, who just started his freshman year in high school. I can't even process that. Like, where did the time go? He's a high school freshman, and I have another brother who is a college senior. Like, what is happening? Like, the world is going by. Time is going by fast. But he reminds me of my younger brother, this group of these young kids who are just very opinionated, can articulate their thoughts very coherently, unlike certain presidential candidates, and could just really, just be knowing things. I'm just like, what? Noah just knows. Like, and I'm just fascinated. I'm just like, how do you know that? Like, what are you doing? But like, I'm also thinking about myself, and I'm like, I was that kid, like, that was in the room, that was like, the smart aleck. And I think there's a special place for kids like that. Like, I love it. That was just really refreshing, just seeing him do his thing. There was a lot of influencers there. The influencers were definitely doing their thing. The behind the scenes tea that I was hearing is that there was a lot of clashing with the press and influencers. Meaning that there was special space given to them. They were prioritized in a way that was more than the actual journalists and press. I have mixed thoughts on how I feel about that. I think to a certain extent, what is interesting is that the DNC argued the reason why they really invested heavily in influencers this year compared to any other time in modern history, because influencers weren't really out back then, was because they really said they wanted to tap into a group of people that will not watch the DNC on TV, right? They will not be up. They won't watch network TV. But if some of their favorite TikTokers and Instagrammers or whatnot is using their platforms to get people excited and educate people or inform them about the election, then that will play a role in inspiring them to go out and vote. I can appreciate that, right? The only thing I will say, though, is that from a journalism news stand, is that if there becomes a culture where we're seeing it already, and it's already happening, where companies and brands will only give credence to influencers, you know that you're getting a very biased, one-sided lens of something. So while you all were looking at TikTok videos of influencers basically just highlighting all the fabulous marketing, it's basically extended marketing of the party, right? It's not necessarily, it's definitely not journalism, right? Because the goal is it's angled, it's biased, right? The depiction of the DNC will just show one perception and one framing, which is highly positive and very much so in the favor of marketing and messaging of the DNC Democratic Committee, National Committee. However, journalists can see all the things and consider all the stuff. And I saw a clip by a journalist that was talking about, like, look, while the Democrats are saying they're going to take Wall Street to the max and going to hold these big banks accountable, do you all know that they had those VIP DNC suites that were millions of dollars, and that big donors and corporations that helped put the DNC on, helped fund the DNC, were in those suites helping to pay? And they were in top suites watching DNC, but they were having the best foods, the best liquor, the best wine, the best cocktails. And they were somewhere looking down at the everyday people, which were those committee people, those delegates who were local elected officials and committee people and ward leaders and people like that. And they were looking at the bottom. And in many ways, big old Wall Street, big old money that was sitting in those nice suites up there were definitely like, look, we running the show, because they can dump as much money as they want in politics thanks to Citizens United, right? Which was that horrible decision. And as a result, big money still runs politics, whether you're a Democrat or Republican. So there were suites at the DNC, VIP lounges and special areas that were millions of dollars. And even mainstream media had to pay for certain types of seating and the positioning in order to cover it. There's a lot of money that is made for the DNC. You can't run these elections. I mean, Kamala has made hundreds of millions of dollars in the past weeks. Elections nowadays cost millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. Like, this is a major enterprise in the city and in the country, right? This is big money. And because Citizens United has opened that floodgate, that Supreme Court decision that allowed people to just give whatever to politics, it has changed the way that candidates have to fundraise now. Like, there's no real regulations as much, to be honest. And so that's what we're dealing with, right? But a journalist, right, can say that, can do that, right? Could you imagine if an influencer was like out there, like going to the suites and being like, let me talk to people in these high-end suites. Who's upstairs? Who's over there? Where's the big money at? Like, that's what journalists do. And so there was, what I was hearing on the ground was that there was a level of higher priority of influences over journalists by the DNC. And I can see that because pretty much the DNC is giving them talking points, giving them messages, and they're going to do what they want on script, right? So there is a bias in that regard, and I definitely could see it there. I also think we're uncommitted, right? I wish there would have been a Palestinian American that would have spoke at the DNC. I understand probably why they did not do that, but I also think that there could have been somebody that they could have picked within their own group, delegates and people that respectfully was there, right? Because I think there was a risk, right? The uncommitted people, like, they want to go. Like, no, it's called the Democratic National Convention for a reason. Because the Democratic National Convention, right, is going to platform folks that are going to acknowledge and speak in favor of their presidential candidate. Now, while there could be critiques and certain things, they're not going to put somebody on this DNC stage that's going to speak against the Democratic Party's speak against the Democratic Party's agenda per se, that will say certain language that could be mirrored as anti-Semitic, or say certain language that could be, that could create liability. So, like, no one's going to platform an entity to basically dog them out in front of America. It's just not going to happen. And so while I was hearing people make that demand, I was like, the goalpost keeps moving, right? The goalpost was Kamala needs to call for a ceasefire. She's been calling for a ceasefire, right? She's done that. Immediate ceasefire, she said that. Okay, then it was don't pick Josh Shapiro because of his pro-Israel stances. She picked Tim Walz. And I don't think she picked Tim Walz because of uncommitted. I think that there was a lot of reasons why. And I think one of the reasons why is that I think that I can see her meshing well with Tim Walz. But at the end of the day, Tim Walz was also was a preferred candidate clearly by the Democratic Party for various reasons across various lines. Now, there were a lot of people that wanted Shapiro, but she felt comfortable with Walz. And I see why she picked him. And that also was something that was a request that was answered, right? But then they come to the DNC and the conversation then shifts to, you need to have somebody from uncommitted, whatever, come speak, whatever. And it's like, I just don't know if that was the answer either. I did think a Palestinian American should have been there, right? Somebody who could have spoke to losing family behind the bloodshed in Gaza, right? Somebody that could have said, that I could have made the case and said, listen, more work could be done from this party. But the other alternative, definitely, here's what they think about this issue. They're not calling for a ceasefire. They want Israel, or they want more bombs. They don't want this war to end. They want this to be a divisive issue. That they want certain leaders to, quote unquote, finish the job. That they don't want Palestine to be on the map, right? That they want something that's going to create more division, more pain, more hurt, and more suffering. And at this administration, that while they need to change and progress as an entity, I know that they can do better. And you know why I feel like that messaging could have worked? Because we saw that the Democratic Party had Republicans come on stage that was like, look, I'm a lifelong Republican. I'm a Republican, but even though I don't agree with the administration on everything, I know Donald Trump is the worst. I do feel like there are a lot of Palestinian Americans, especially those that I know that I've talked to in Philadelphia, that are not on the fringe of this, where they're like uncommitted voters, not voting. Or they're not that, right? They are frustrated. They are angry. I'm not going to say they're not, right? The anger and rage is rightfully there, right? But their mindset is more that I just want to see more from this current administration, and that they do believe that Kamala Harris and her running mate, and that even Biden is, in the political sense, on the side to do more. They just have not done it. And they want more from them on this issue, but they're not going to pretend that Trump and them are the same. And they will not entertain that false equivalency. Even though there are some people on the far leftists, that are very much so, are just disenchanted, just completely all over the place. There was a lot of rhetoric that was said around, all kind of things that was said, like, oh, uncommitted until X, Y, and Z, uncommitted until all these other things. A lot of different stuff. And so, that's important. And I think, at a certain extent, there are some important changes, and I do think we need to look into that. We do need to unpack that. And I think she is, right? But I do think the DNC probably was a little bit more risk averse, that they didn't want to have a situation where the rhetoric would have went in a different direction. It could have created liabilities for the rest of it. Because at the end of the day, we have a top-down approach with seats, election seats, all of those different things. And I just think there has to be good measure on that. And so there were some people that was out there, like Dr. Cornel West, that was out there talking about the Democratic Party have a black agenda. And it's like, I just wonder, when I hear stuff like that, I'm just like, why is it that these people show up for these national races, but local seats and local elections, they're not asking their mayors, their governors, their people? Like, I just find it that there's always all this shifting. And Dr. Cornel West, I've had a lot of respect for him over the years, not as much anymore. He is an alpha man, but we don't agree on a lot of things politically. I just have an issue with just the fact that a lot of his ways that he goes at things is based on a level of bitterness. And he needs to admit that when Obama came in 2008, him and Tavis Smiley was hating because they weren't in that coalition, that they weren't, lauded. And so he's always been just such a hypocrite when it comes to how he speaks on politics and how he acts. And I just feel like, dude, pay your child support for your kids. Because let's be real, like, I'm not even throwing shade. That's just a fact. Look him up and look child support up. And him and child support, they're not running alongside each other. They kind of seem a little distant. I need him to run alongside child support and take care of these kids he got out here. Because it's very interesting how he wants to talk about black agenda and about this. Well, talk about your black father agenda and worry about the agenda in your household and making sure that the kids you have, that you're providing and paying child support and taking care and keeping yourself together, allegedly. But you can go Google what I just said. Because it's very interesting how he got all this self-righteousness for certain folks and want to call people all kind of names and this. But it's very funny how it starts at home, buddy. Get your house in order before you try to tell other White Houses to get their stuff in order. I just think it's something about him that's just a little biased and a little bitter. He got some begrudgment. A lot of this frustration isn't just rooted in, and I want to be very clear that there are some people, right? There are Palestinian Americans and those who are very concerned about this crisis that's happening in the Middle East. And I completely understand that. Okay. But let me be very clear that there are some people who are capitalizing off of this for their own personal egos and grifts, and that they are using this as an opportunity to censor themselves in ways that's just disingenuous. And so we can hold that nuance. And I definitely see some people where I'm like, oh, you on a paid campaign. Oh, you're an influencer for this particular organization. So they got you out here on the check because you didn't get on the Harris campaign. So you didn't get to be on the Harris campaign. You didn't get to be able to go to the Democratic National Convention as a guest or a delegate or something. So now you outside trying to make noise. And to be very clear, the media has done an interesting job, not in a good way, of disproportionately expressing this. There were people that were not committed, right? But on the larger scale of things, I heard from a lot of delegates and people that was there that the uncommitted people was not all up and down the convention or around. There was a lot of space and distance where they were at. I heard that there was roughly maybe 4,000 people that was out there in some level, but it was not the massive March on Washington type of energy that you would have thought, right? Now, in retrospect, there was like over 50-something, 60-something people that was there for the DNC. Thousands of people was at the DNC in general, right? But the not committed people did not have that kind of groundswell, massive alternative energy like the way we saw the Women's March. It was not like that. And even their proximity to the actual DNC area to actually shake shit up at the DNC, it wasn't like that. Like everyone that I know that was inside the DNC, even journalists that were present, were like, the DNC was its own world. Like there were some protests outside, but they weren't even like on the ground. Like there was a wall, there was spacing, there was distancing. That a lot of that protest stuff, if you want to see it, you had to go further out. It was outside. It wasn't even deep in the parking lot. And even when people were exiting, there were some folks stopping cars, but it just got real. It was a lot of chaos, and disorganization was some of it. And I think the media definitely in some aspects was not really being transparent about how some of what was being seen was not as upfront and up close to the actual DNC itself. So there was a couple of interesting, measures to consider there. But I just hope that the uncommitted group, that the conversations get better, because I just feel like that we're seeing some rifts that don't necessarily have to be as divisive if people get more realistic and intellectually honest about the stake of this election. So that's my thoughts on that. And then moving on, Trump said some very anti-Semitic things about Josh Shapiro, the governor, called him an overrated Jewish governor, talked about his faith, talked about how Trump was saying how much he personally has given his supported Israel more than anyone. Just really nasty. The rhetoric was anti-Semitic. And it was interesting because the way that the Anti-Defamation League and other people responded to what Trump said did not have the same level of ferocity and anger that they've given to other people. Like when Whoopi Goldberg made some comments in the past that some people viewed as anti-Semitic, there was a whole teach-in and lesson for her. There was a suspension. There was like, all kind of things she had to do. And they're just not holding Trump to that accountability. Now, I understand that people can say Trump is who he is, whatever. But at the end of the day, this is a man running for president. And I just have seen them, like, if Ilhan Omar gave a different said the same things, the way that she would have been attempted to be canceled, if any Muslim elected official would have had similar rhetoric, they would have been considered anti-Semitic immediately. There would have been statements, calls for the resignation. There would have been a level of outrage that we would have not heard the end of. And there were a lot of people talking about how very problematic that has been, that, okay, when leftists are saying stuff like that rightfully so, they're being critiqued, right? But that when people like Donald Trump and conservatives say things like that, that energy is not being kept at the same magnitude. So what I mean by that is like we see this, okay? Like we see this hypocrisy. We see this problem. We do. We see this problem. And to me, I think what has been said is from people who are a part of some of these coalitions is that if you have a pro-Israel governmental stance, the level to which people will call you out for anti-Semitism isn't as swift. Because Donald Trump has a pro-Israel position, a lot of these groups are not as aggressive on his anti-Semitic language. And I think that's a very big concern, that there's becoming a conflation that if you're pro-Israel, which is a governmental political stance, that somehow you're not considered anti-Semitic. That's not a good conflation. And it's actually problematic, because then if there are people who are critical of Israel's handling of this current crisis, that if they are to say other things, then that warrants the anti-Semitism, but not the pro-Israel governmental position with the anti-Semitism laced. Like, no, that's not how that works. Let me be very clear as a Black person. You can support the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and still have racist beliefs. There are people that love MLK, Republicans up and down, but they're also racist. There are Republicans that are also racist. So I don't subscribe to that. And I don't think that should be the direction. But it's becoming a pattern. I'm noticing that because Trump in one breath will say he's pro-Israel as far as a governmental political stance, he's also saying some very anti-Semitic stuff, and he's attacking Jewish Democrats. So it's okay for him to say these things. Like, why listen, I think Josh Shapiro is overrated for a variety of reasons, but it's not because he's Jewish. Because to think that he's overrated and name his religious faith is to be anti-Semitic. My reasons for critiquing Josh Shapiro has nothing to do about his faith, whether he's a Christian, Jewish, Catholic, whatever it is. That has nothing to do with why I am critical of his policies. But again, the fact that Trump can't even speak too much about Shapiro's policies and is fixated on Shapiro's Jewish identity to make these remarks is very anti-Semitic and very problematic. And I just need people to do better with keeping that same energy across the end, because anti-Semitism, whether it's from a leftist or a conservative, is just fucked up. And I just think, I'm just surprised, because when I called Trump out on it, I was just like, I don't know why I'm seeing a little bit of less energy for Trump. I just, in my mind, was like, oh, Trump is going to get it. No, people just kind of moved on. And I think that's very problematic. And also speaks to the anti-Blackness and the double standards, right, of other people who have said, who don't even have political power, right? I didn't see people like Kanye West get more heat for what he said. He should have got heat, but I'm like, how does a presidential candidate say something like that and everyone just be like, okay, whatever? So I don't really like that people are easing off of Trump. No, call him out, condemn him, because it's still condemnable offenses. I digress. RFK Jr. has endorsed Trump. And I'm just going to leave it at that. Are we surprised? No, we're not surprised. RFK has been a joke. RFK Jr. has been a joke. His family's embarrassed by him. He's been a joke for a very long time. So him doing this does not surprise me. It's actually like obvious. This man has no shot of winning. And so he's just a nut. And if you ever heard how he talks, you'll just be like, yeah, this guy's nuts. So not crazy about it. Who's surprised? Whatever. Beyoncé. And I was going to talk about Beyoncé in the earlier segment, but I'm going to bring it all together. Let me just start off by saying to you all that for the people that are like angry at TMZ, TMZ's been fucking wrong a lot of times and y'all was not ready to admit it. But I guess they done lost their credibility to a lot of y'all finally, because I try to tell you all, nobody's leaking anything on Beyoncé except Beyoncé. Listen, Beyoncé after 2013 has been one of the most effective public figures that have been able to not get stuff leaking. The only person that can break Beyonce's news is Beyoncé and a woman named Yvette Noel Schul. Okay, that is Beyonce's publicist. And if Beyonce's publicist don't say it's so, it ain't so. If she's trying to surprise, she surprises. But I follow Yvette, and I met her at the Grammys, as you all know, this year, and she's a lovely woman in person. I follow her social media. I follow her Instagram. When those rumors were coming up that Beyonce was performing at the DNC, Yvette was already trying to blow the whistle and say, y'all, this ain't it. This ain't true. This ain't that. And she contacted the Hollywood Reporter, and they ran it and made it very clear. Like, she was like, Beyonce's not scheduled to perform, and she's not performing. Like, stop this. And that rumor was just such a mess. And people have their speculations about, did the rumors start to try to get people to watch the show and view in? If they did, genius strategy. But I just wish people keep Beyonce, Taylor Swift's name out their mouth when it comes to this stuff. Like, I knew it was cap. Like, Freedom is a beautiful song. Freedom was great. Beyonce is not going to do no more than that. I mean, she might. Who knows? I mean, she did show up for Hillary, not the DNC, but she has shown up. Maybe she will later. But I told people all this, she's going to open up. She's going to come. Are you guys nuts? The last night of the DNC is about the presidential candidate. The biggest star is the presidential candidate. The moment we're all waiting for. Do you think that we wanted headlines that would have been Kamala gives speech, Beyonce comes out? No, Beyonce is not taking up that woman's space in that way. It is not about her. And we are such an annoying celebrity obsessed culture that people really, I mean, listen, some of y'all are so enamored in politics that you want this thrill, but the country, that is a very sacred moment. And so I knew that there was going to be no surprises like that at that time. Now, if Beyonce would have came out later and performed, sure, like Pink did, like John Legend did. But if you thought for 5 seconds that a celebrity was going to center themselves in the official announcement of a major political party, this is the first Black woman, first South Asian woman to ever accept a nomination as president of the United States. If you thought that moment needed Beyonce or Taylor Swift to make it better, or it needed the distraction of those celebrities too, we got to get you some help, baby. We got to, like celebrity culture is just sometimes over. It's so fucking annoying and disgusting. I just was in my mind like, it's not happening. And quite frankly, I didn't want it to happen because quite frankly, that's not what that is for. And so it's funny how everyone will talk about time and place and things. Y'all, like, that was never going to happen. And it was not supposed to happen. And the fact that there were some journalists, some young journalists that are just love those babies, but they were just like, I still think she's going to come at the end. It's not about her. Why are you waiting for Beyonce when literally the first Black woman to accept the Democratic nomination is historic enough? And literally that's her moment. And she does not need anybody to share a headline with for people to give a fuck. What planet are we on? Like, I just don't understand. Like, Kamala was enough to end that show. That's her moment. Like, what? That's how I really felt when I saw some of y'all doing that. I'm just like, are we so disconnected or disenchanted or just so not in awe with politics that we just really need that? Hillary did not need Taylor Swift or anybody to come out when she had her moment. Hillary Clinton did her thing. We never say that with men. We don't be like Bruno Mars to come out, you know, for Biden or something. Like, we never expect that from men. But women, why? I'm just keeping y'all honest. I've never heard anybody, like Obama, when he gave his speech in 2008, nobody need to come out for Obama or do anything like that for Obama. Like, Obama was the moment, like Kamala really was. Like, we don't need that. So let's just sometimes get real. And when TMZ announced that, I'm like, who gave you that tip? No one's ever going to do that. They're never going to give their tip. But like, yeah, okay. Okay. But outside of that, she's got an $89 bottle of whiskey that she wants to promote and get you all excited about. Because, of course, whiskey. Look, everyone's talking about how she's been this era with promoting her brand, the lack of promotion for Cowboy Carter, or the sometiminess of it all. I just think Beyonce is just on her entrepreneur journey. She's getting her bags. She's making her money. And that seems to be what she's prioritizing right now. And to a certain extent, I don't blame her. I mean, she's given a lot, nearly a quarter of the century to her fans. And honestly, I just think she's just throwing stuff up in the air and just having fun. And we just got to recognize that she's in a different era of her career. I mean, it is going to be Virgo's. It's Virgo season. She's a Virgo. Her birthday's September 4th. But I think she's in a different period of her life where she's just having fun. So if she comes out with a tampon line, or she decides to open a restaurant that's inspired by some family member we don't know about yet, like Aunt Pam's, country cooking or something, I don't know. Let's just get prepared for it, y'all, because that's just where she's at this point. And I mean, it is what it is. I enjoy Beyonce, but I also don't worship her in the way that I expect her to do these things. I've told people, just give up on trying to predict Beyonce's calendar. To enjoy Beyonce is to always be prepared for the unexpected, unplanned. That's really what it is. Like, she could either drop an album tomorrow, or she could just come out with a new, anti-itch cream. I mean, anything can happen from this woman at this point. Like, I mean, whiskey was not on my list, but at this point, she can also have her own rodeo. I don't know what she's going to do, child. She's just unpredictable. Just have fun with her. You can't contain her. She's uncontainable. So that's my thoughts on that. J-Lo and Ben Affleck divorced again. It's official. J-Lo has filed the paperwork. Apparently there's no prenup potentially involved. We don't know the real reasons why. Everyone wants to speculate. Look, at the end of the day, I am in the class of believing, I know there's people that call her the modern day, Elizabeth Taylor. I don't know about all that. And if Ben Affleck is who? Richard Burden. I don't know that. But what I will say is that I think, and this is my opinion, I could be wrong. I mean, I don't follow them enough, but I think that J-Lo felt a certain high, and I think she was at a certain point where she wanted to shake her life up a little bit. She can't help herself. She's a Gemini. I think she wanted to shake some things up in her life, and she wanted to have a little bit more fun and be a little bit more playful and do some different things. And I think that getting with Ben was an opportunity to spice her life up in a way that, I'll take that back. J-Lo is actually July 24th. J-Lo is a Leo. That is very interesting. Very interesting. I will just say that. I think my grandmother's birthday is July 24th. She's deceased, but that's my grandma's birthday. So I'm like, oh, wow. So I think she's on the cusp, like Cancer, Leo, something like that. She's cuspy. But J-Lo, I think that she wanted to just ride. I think she just was like feeling good. She looked at it as an opportunity to brand. And it's just wild to me that she created that album, that whole movie about love and all these things. And then shortly after that, she's divorced. And so it's very interesting that I feel like J-Lo's love life is almost mirrors her career. When her career is not doing too good, her love life isn't doing too good. When her career seems to be exciting and going on a high, then she typically is romantically in her love life. And that's just a pattern of her. And I can name several patterns, but I just noticed that typically when J-Lo's career isn't necessarily flourishing or doing as hot, that's when relationship issues tend to impact her. And when she's doing fabulous and doing fun, she's more flirty, she's more datey, she's more whatever. So, it's a very interesting dynamic. Now, for this week's Ask Ernest, I definitely want to dive into this. And I'm going to take some time in this question, because this is a very important question you all asked me. About relationships being not equally yoked. And I've talked about this in previous episodes, but this one fan messaged me about this topic, and I wanted to answer this question. And she basically, I'm being mindful about descriptors, because a lot of you all listen to this show, and with Ask Eater last week about long lines, people was like, you talking about middle child clubhouse? Are you talking about middle child and BLTs, child? I was not just talking about them. I was just talking about long lines in general and how I'm not a fan of them, of long lines. I do like middle child, but I do think waiting, 45 minutes in the heat for a BOT is a little outlandish for me. But that's just me. But I was talking about there's other places that do long lines. And listen, I was very neutral in my response. I said people can pick and choose when they want to do something when it comes to food or whatever. But nonetheless, so this woman basically was just talking about, she mentioned me talking about a guy that she dated that she took a chance on, and said that she was more educated in certain ways and she had certain experiences, and she thought dating him was that there was an opportunity because he was a nice guy and sweet, but at the same time there was certain differences in lifestyle and things that she just thought he would be more grateful for her, give her more grace, give her more space because of the fact that she is makes more money and she's this and she's that, like all these different things that she felt like she had over him. And that to a certain extent she's like, is she bugging or is she wrong for breaking up with him, or being wrong for expecting him to give her a little bit more leeway in certain avenues and things. I'm gonna do two responses. I'm gonna answer this the gay way. I'm gonna answer this I'm gonna address this to the cis heads, the straights, and I'm gonna answer this in the gay way or a more gender neutral way, because there's different ways to look at this. So to my cis heads, to my straight people that are having heteronormative relationships, let me say something about men. If you're a woman and you choose, date the man that you deserve. Date the man that is your peer, your equal, that you're equally yoked to. Date the man that compliments you universally. If you look at a relationship as a charity, then you'll forever be the donor. If you look at a relationship as I'm the one that is the carer and provider, you're not going to get what you want fully. You're not going to be satisfied. There's always going to be holes in the road and things. You're talking to somebody as a queer person that's done this. I was in relationships previously that was not equally yoked, where I dated dudes that wasn't as educated as me, wasn't as, ambitious, or they did, or just was just completely, just not, where I was at in my life. I was at a certain point, they were not there. And someone could say not there yet, right? But those hiccups, those insecurities, the jealousy, the issues, they come up, they swell up in different ways. And that's not to say that equally yoked relationships don't have disagreements, don't have conversations, don't have those things. But if we know that relationships already come with their own unique set of challenges and things to work on and do, to add in additional disparities on top of that just set up a relationship to collide and to clash. And we see this often in various relationships in society, where we see women, certain women feel like that. And so I know women, a lot of smart women that I went to college with that were like, oh, I went out with this dude that wasn't as established or wasn't as whatever, and I try to give them a chance. And no, but let's be clear about this. And it's time to face the elephant in the room. And this goes for everybody in these relationships. There are people, listen, a man is going to be a man regardless. If you think that a man is going to just be some self-serving puppet or puppy that's going to do what you say, you shouldn't want anyone like that. No man should want a woman like that. See, I feel like when relationships, whether it's a man trying to be dominant or a woman, when you don't have equally yoked relationships, there's always going to be one side that's going to hold some resentment based on another person's circumstances. And so I always tell people, date the person or pursue the person that compliments you holistically. Because if you don't, you're going to find yourself acting like you're doing charity. You're going to have a sense of unfair entitlement. And you're going to also put that person in a position where they feel like they're not your equal and you're treating them like they're superior. And people can feel that. People can feel that. And I never want to be in a relationship where I feel like I'm in my marriage, I just love that Mr. Johnson has an identity, has a career, has his own goals, his own ambitions, and that he's educated and he's connected in his own way. And that what I do as a partner, as a husband, right, because of that partner word. But what I do I guess you could say partnership, right, in that way. But what I do as a husband is that I amplify and enhance his dreams and his goals. And he does the same for me. And so there's never moments where I feel resentment, like I'm doing too much, that everything's on me, always on me, and I feel this pressure cooker. I don't feel that way. I feel like I have someone that will have my back when I need them to, and they know that they can have mine, and that there's no disproportionate level of weight, that a lot of our relationship is even. Now, there are times in our relationship where sometimes someone had to step up a little bit more in certain cases than others, right? Or fall back. But there is a nice balance in the love and the care and the protection. And you got to have that with somebody that you find is credible. If you come in a relationship with somebody where you already know that they can't do for you the same way you do for them, and they can't show up for you the same way, and that you're coming in and that's going to be a permanent fixture, that's going to set you up for failure. And there are a lot of people that come in relationships expecting that comes in thinking, yeah, I'm going to be the one that's going to do all the things. They're never going to do this. They're never going to. No, because we as people deserve care. We deserve pampering. We deserve compassion. We deserve grace. We deserve flexibility. And we need a partner that's just as intelligently and intellectually astute, considerate, and compassionate enough and yoked enough to do that for us. And I see a lot of women lately that will sacrifice or compromise on that want just to have somebody. And that never works. It backfires all the time. And or you're miserable. Or that's how you see people have affairs, where you wonder, well, why did this person step outside their marriage or relationship and cheat? Because you was with somebody that could not give you or care for you or give you what you deserve and what you want. And that takes patience, right? Like, every person you meet is not going to be that person. And so every person you meet, you don't need to try to make that person. That's one thing I did differently in my entire dating journey. I never gave, every person the same level of prioritization, because everybody doesn't earn it or deserve that. And so as you navigate this dating pool, and as you begin to evolve and expand your taste palette on that, just keep in mind that these relationships are going to evolve with time. They're going to carry different meanings. They're going to mean different things. But make sure you get the person that suits you, that fits you, that understands you, and take that time. Because if you don't, you'll find yourself in various situations that you will feel unequally yoked, and you'll find yourself feeling used and spent and taken advantage of or not understood. So don't do charity in love. Be specific, be selfish in that if you want a type of person, go for the person that you feel like suits you and compliments you. That's what I did. My man, I love him. Like, he is that person. Like, he compliments me. He is the guy. And I love it that my friends that have been with me through my journey and know other people I dated can be able to say the same and vouch for me and say, you lucked out. I'm very fortunate that I'm with somebody that is as equally fortunate and grateful for me as I am for them. And that's what we should strive for, an equally yoked union. So ladies, gentlemen, theys, thems, everybody, go for the person that you're equally yoked with. And that's my Ask Ernest. So this week with movies, there was one great film I really enjoyed on Hulu that I think everyone needs to watch. It is called The Supremes at Earl's. This is an indie film, but it's Black. It's a full Black cast. There is some, there are other cast folks, but it's centered on these incredible Black women who are just incredible. It's an interesting film. Some of the lead actresses is three major actresses. Anjanae Ellis Taylor, who's an Oscar-nominated actress who was in King Richard. She played alongside Will Smith as his wife, which is, of course, based on a true story around Serena and Venus Williams' father. There's also Tina Marbury, who's an incredible actress. Well, she's one of the writers. Tina Marbury's a writer. But the other actress is Sanaa Lathan, who's also incredible in this film. Sanaa Lathan, I don't think, gets enough roles where she gets to really showcase herself and do her thing. I mean, she was in, Brown Sugar and a lot of other films in the early 2000s, of course, Love and Basketball. But in recent years, I just don't feel like she gets casted enough. And I'm reminded of just how great she is. Tina Marbury was a director, an incredible Black filmmaker who really does her thing in this film, directing it. And I just think she, we talk about a lot of Black, not too many Black filmmakers. We always talk about, the major players, but this woman is just great. And she's directed some other great films that haven't received a lot of attention. I'm thinking of like Mississippi Damned, a couple other films, Horror Noir, which was more of an indie-esque film. These are like Itty Bitty Titty Committee was another film she did, but these like in the early 2000s. But she is dope. And the other actress in this film is Uzo Aduba from Orange is the New Black. So the three of these Black actresses, Anjanae, Uzo, and Sanaya Lathan, they really bring this incredible performance to this. So they're a trio of best friends. They're known as the Supremes. It's not a musical film at all, but they're just known as the Supremes. And they've been friends for decades. And this film kind of shows how their journey they've weathered some major life storms through marriage, through children, through joy, through the blues. I mean, this is a period film that shows the evolution of a trio of friends who go through different aspects of life. I don't want to tell some of the details. There's a lot of other great actors in this film, some interesting cameos and surprises. It is a period piece that kind of goes through various cycles of these women's lives. And it's beautiful and it's modern and it's hip and it's fun and it's so different. And, in my opinion, a film like this should definitely get Oscar consideration, but because, big budgets and the campaigns, I don't know if it'll get that level of attention, but I really like it. And I think the cast might be strong enough to give some attention. Some of the actors in the film, as far as the men go, Mekhi Phifer is in it. And there's some other folks that I don't want to tell too much of the plot because I want people to enjoy it. But it's on Hulu. It's about 2 hours. It's rated PG-13. It's not a very like vulgar, type of. You want something. It's deep. There's some deep moments, but it's also just a very like feel good film that's filled with some real life shit, but just also just feels good. And there's not that many movies that I'm seeing in a box office like this. And so people have always asked me like, well, where are the good movies? Why are we not seeing them in the theaters? Why is a film like The Supremes or Earl's, Sit and Eat? Why is this not in the theater? And I've heard various theories, but recently I saw a video featuring Matt Damon, which is an Oscar-winning actor, but not for his acting, for screenwriter. Him and Ben Affleck share an Oscar together for the screenplay for Good Will Hunting, which, I don't know if you know this, but Ben Affleck has 2 Oscars. He has one for screenwriting alongside Ben Affleck in Good Will Hunting. And he has another one for producer credit for Argo, which is a film he directed, and a lot of people thought that it won Best Picture, and he was a producer, but he was also a director, and people thought that he got snubbed for not being nominated for Best Actor for Argo, and a lot of people thought he should have been nominated, and some people thought he should have won. So it's very interesting, some Hollywood history there. But Matt Damon did this interview recently, and it stuck with me about his theory, well, not even theory, but why he claims that the movies that we want to see suck. He blames it on DVDs. Now, enough of you all who listen to this podcast know what a DVD is. It's a digital video disc. At one point in time, DVDs reigned supreme. Nowadays, DVDs are like obsolete. And so is pretty much Blu-ray. Pretty much any type of physical video experience is pretty much obsolete. There's all these little files and things you can get, and most people stream everything. Like, looking back, I remember DVDs, right? Where this is an upgrade to VHS, right? Video home systems or whatever they called it. I grew up in a VHS and DVD era where I remember VHSs. I remember having tons of Disney movies and treating them like, because there was also like the VHSs where they were in the little, carbon thing, but those were more like the adult movies. Disney movies had a very nice packaging and they were set up in a way where it almost felt like a library because it was the masterpiece collection. So you have to have all the Disney classics and the masterpieces and all that good stuff, platinum editions, special editions. Disney was original. We're going to give you 1,000 versions of the same film and we're going to get you to buy it. And I was that person. Like I had like 4 or 5 different versions of the same film. But they were released like in a periodic period. So they would have never come out the same year. Like anybody remembers this era, my fellow millennials, definitely Gen Xers, you all remember like Disney had this imaginary thing called the Vault. And the Vault would have a release date on these classic films that came out in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s or whatever. And they would release them not every year, the same film, but like if you got one film one year, it could come out, it would come out 5 years later or 10 years later. So I think about, for example, The Lion King. When The Lion King first came out in theaters, it came out in 1974. It's been 30 years of The Lion King. Can you believe that? Yes. 30 years of The Lion King. When it came out on VHS, it came out in 1985. It came out the following year or whatnot. That was traditionally how it worked. The film would have a box office run and then it will come out on home video. The next time The Lion King was released on VHS and for the first time on DVD was probably around 2003, 2004 when they released what was called the Platinum Edition. So that was like nearly 9 years later that it would come back out again. And so Disney did this with several films. Beauty and the Beast came out, on VHS in 1992. It didn't come back out until like 2005 or something like that for the Platinum Edition release. So many, many years later. And so Disney would do these rollouts of these classics and they would sell like hot biscuits. So those hot biscuits, baby, they wanted them. That was how DVDs really took off and did their thing. And, it was a big deal. It was epic. It was one of those things where people were really hyped. People were really, here for the good times, and that was an era. I just think about it. And so when the DVD era DVDs kind of was a big blockbuster moment in the early 2000s because basically when everybody was over VHSs and VHSs became obsolete, because let me tell you why I was over VHSs. Because you had to rewind those films. And Blockbuster, remember they had to say be kind and rewind. And you get annoyed because you have to rewind a movie back for like 7 minutes or something. So I remember when I was younger, whenever I rented a movie, I would rewind it. And while I was rewinding, I would just go brush my teeth or whatever before bed or whatever when I was watching the movie late. Because traditionally I rented movies, like when I was little, my parents take me to Blockbuster, whatever, and we would go and do movie night or something, and I would like brush my teeth while the movie's rewinding. That's just a loose memory I had. But, once DVDs came out, capitalism made us some of us, go buy the DVD versions of all of those VHSs. Because some of those movies got lost. Some of them, once you lost the movie or something got wrong with it, you couldn't see the movie unless you watched it on the Disney Channel or you watched it on ABC around Christmas when they would play some of the classics, but you didn't have this instant access to watching the film. So look at me sound like a historian. But, we remember this. Like if the VHS was lost, you had to go rent it and, you have to rent it and that'd be annoying because you have to pay so much money every time to rent a movie. You couldn't buy it, or you have to go to a pawn shop or go somewhere and find the movie because they didn't sell at the stores because they were only available for limited edition. So you have to go to like different stores and try to buy those films off. But what I'm saying is there was so much money in the post-production of a film. So whether you bought the DVD, whether you bought the VHS, whatever, there was money spent. And a lot of times the money spent on these movies was more than the movie ticket, because the movie ticket was like maybe $10 back then, $12. It was probably cheaper than that shit. But back then, the movie tickets were whatever because you was gonna see it one time, right? But that rental was like, okay, you're gonna see it multiple times. And you get to borrow it for a couple of nights, and it was nowhere else you could see it. And then when it hit pay-per-view or something, maybe, but even with pay-per-view, you couldn't rewind it, or you could only have it for a period of time on your TV. And if there was HBO, yeah, HBO would show these films, but you didn't own those films. You couldn't control those films, right? So there was always these checks and balances on making sure consumers spent money on these films that costed these big budgets. Now, Matt Damon, his theory, his claim, which I hear it, is that he said that when DVDs got killed, and we remember when DVDs got killed, because DVDs got killed with Netflix. When Netflix started to have the home subscriber system of streaming, and you could basically have all your movies when you want it, how you want it, okay, then at a certain point, people was like, oh, so now you can move it to the subscription bubble. And so then with Netflix, with a lot of these films, it was like, well, I can get this on demand. I can get this instantly. I can get a digital download this. I can get this like on my TV, my set or whatever, without having to purchase a bunch of shit. And maybe streaming in many ways was good for the environment, right? Because all that plastic, all that paper, all that resources that it takes to make individual movies. Like, I mean, look at CDs. Like CDs, I mean, people are going back to buying vinyls. That's a novelty, right? But even how we spend money on these like individual things. There was a lot of paper, a lot of things wasted in the 90s, right? For better, for worse, right? Lots of magazines. Everybody had a magazine. Everybody had newspapers. We wasted a lot of resources and water. And so I will say that even though it's sad that we're seeing a shrinkage of print materials, print, not the journalism, just the print, right? That's shrinking. This is good for the environment, arguably. But then again, intellectually, it may not be because people don't even know how to read anymore. I mean, people are not reading like they used to, or even knowing how to consume media. So maybe if newspapers are more accessible, maybe people would get more information, but I digress. Cost risk analysis. But that being said, Matt Damon says that back in the day, it was easier for studios to make a variety of films. So, you could do a small budget film, you could do a big budget film, you could do a film, it was a variety, right? Because the reality was, if you had a film, the half of the money or most of the money, if in some cases, would we earned on the back end. So this is after the box office. Movies were not expected to make its entire budget in the box office back in the day because DVDs would make up for the rest. And that was a good example with animated films. So when animated films come out, there was a love to make a lot of animated films back in the day, or cute, fun, movies, because the IP, the intellectual property, would expand beyond the film. So let's say you made Hercules for $100 million, hypothetically, you could make that film from 100 million. You didn't need it to make 100 million at the box office. Now, a lot of Disney movies in the 90s during the Disney Renaissance, Aladdin, Hercules, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Pocahontas, Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, Tarzan, Mulan, all those classics, they made their money. They made coins, right? But the reality is that they over exceeded at the box office. They over excelled. But they didn't necessarily have to, right? So let's say, for example, Hercules was a $100 million film, hypothetically. If it made 60 million at the box office, 50 million at the box office, that would be considered successful, because once it came out on VHS, because they're gonna sell that film for about, let's say, $20 a pop for a VHS. And then rental was gonna have its share. And then, there was gonna be all the other stuff. It could easily make another 50, 70 something million dollars just off of people buying the merch, buying the DVDs, not DVDs at the time, the VHSs. Like, it was going to make its money up. It was going to do great on its own. A lot of those films would do good at the box office, but then make even more money off of the VHS purchases because no one else had access to see those films unless you bought it. And if the movie was really good in the theaters, then the kids would be like, oh my God, I love that film. Like The Lion King was epic. Aladdin, groundbreaking, right? Those VHS sales are ridiculous. If you look up how much money that Disney made off the VHSs before we even talk about the box office numbers, you don't understand the impact. Like, so people say stuff like this is why I tell people, do not compare the impact of a film made in 2024 to a film made in 1994. Because what you got to remember is, okay, if a film did really good at the box office and killed it, like Jurassic Park and Forrest Gump and those classic films, the second part of that story is the VHS sales. So y'all know when we was growing up in the 90s, and a lot of y'all was out in the 90s, right? Y'all remember everybody had the Titanic's box set. Everybody had had Forrest Gump, right? Everybody had The Lion King in their house. Everybody had, those films, those VHS. There were certain VHS that everybody in the house had. Everybody had The Wizard of Oz or something close to that. Godfather box set, the Scarface. Scarface made so much money, considerably, I believe Scarface was a box office flop, but Scarface was a hood cult classic off of the VHS sales alone. So a movie did not necessarily have to go completely apeshit at the box office in order to be reputable or funded, right? So given that context, when people say, well, why is The Lion King so big? Because The Lion King, was out of this world. Like, the VHS sales on The Lion King, in addition to box office. I mean, Titanic is a box office smash, but them DVD sales, baby, takes it to the next level. So movies just were crushing it. Like, the box office, Hollywood could make any type of film, and the likelihood of it being more profitable came on the back end. Now, let's talk about those nicher films, right? So movies like Magnolia and Aaron Brockovich. Now, Aaron Brockovich was a box office, but I love Aaron Brockovich. But you look at the Miramax films under Harvey Weinstein. When Harvey Weinstein made those little indie films or those movies that were serious pieces, period pieces, movies that did not necessarily have that mainstream box office appeal per se. He was big on campaigning those films for the Oscars, because when those movies won Oscars or got major nominations, then the success of that buzz would be put on those DVDs and those films. So back in the day, the Oscars had power, because if you was an indie filmmaker or a filmmaker that made an indie film for a low budget, if your movie won an Academy Award or got nominated for a lot of them, the level of marketing to get people to rent those films and watch those films made enough money that it superseded whatever the budget was for the film. And that's how films like that can continue to get made. So if you look at the 90s, right, you think about The Sixth Sense, the late 90s, early 2000s, Sixth Sense, Magnolia, Vanilla Sky, Shakespeare in Love, The Hours, all of those very niche films that were great. Boys Don't Cry with Hilary Swank, my goodness, a classic. All of those types of movies. Some of them had big Hollywood stars, some of them didn't, right? But all those type of small budget films would play into the Oscar bait. That's how you got Oscar bait, because those films were like prestige films that was like, look, we're not trying to blow the box office out, right? We're trying to get them Oscars. And that Oscar money will come on the back end once the movie comes out, because then when the movie wins the Oscar, then all those DVDs. So people talk about Oscar season, right? We still have Oscar season. But let me put this in context. The Oscars come out in the spring, like February, March of the year. You would put movies out in the fall, like late fall, winter, so they would have that winter run release. And then the Oscars would come, and those films would come out on DVD or VHS back in the day. They would come out after the Oscars because they wanted to see the results. Now, if your film was snubbed or didn't get any nominations, boo-hoo, baby, that was it. You just had to roll it out and hopefully market it some other way. But if your film got some major nominations, then you was driving up the marketing to promote it. And then you wanted to wait until after the Oscars, because once they won those Oscars, then you could put on the cover of the film, of the DVD case, 6 Oscar nominations, nominated for 15, including Best Actress. Like, do you remember this? I know y'all remember this. Like, I know, like, I was super young when this happens, but I was a movie buff, so I was into movies. But I know grown people, like grown folks in the early 2000s, y'all remember how they were marketed. Commercials, critic reviews, 5 stars, Cisco and Ebert, like all of that drove the interest in sales of those indie small films, like Good Will Hunting and other types of films. Jerry Maguire was a box office hit, but also had indie Oscar appeal. That was how money was made at the box office. That was how money was made in Hollywood beyond the box office. I mean, that was just how the industry worked. So Matt Damon is saying that because they don't do DVDs anymore, they don't take risks because now Hollywood studios need to make their money up front. If a movie comes out in theaters, it's got to make up its money. If it does not, it's a flop because guess what? After it comes out in theaters, there's barely any money made after that. Now, there's some people that are now trying to do the direct box office home where you can rent the movie and watch the film in your house and go to the movie theater. There's all these other things, but that money isn't, that they ain't making that much money like they used to. People are just waiting for it to go on HBO Max and these subscriptions. So now you're paying for a bunch of subscriptions compared to these individual films making money. And as a result, the major Hollywood studios are not taking as much risks. So if you look at the summer box office this summer, what was hot? Superhero movies, major Pixar animated films or 3D films, right? That are most of them were sequels. No original films per se. Most of the films that did come out this year were horror films that are genre-based. A couple of major Hollywood, major star carrier films, but you don't see the vast diversity of cinema like we used to. Some of the best films that I've seen over the years are films that were released straight to Netflix. Films that were released, from some cable subscriber, a TV movie, a miniseries, because nowadays the streaming companies, right, they're making their own individual content. So Netflix is no longer just acquiring like old movies. They're now putting their money behind bigger films. Apple TV is now investing in creating it. So all the revenue they're making off the subscriptions, they're now making original films. But the cool thing about them is that because they're now our old library, so our own film. So back in the day, we used to have film libraries. You used to go to somebody's house and they had a thing called a home entertainment system where you would stack all your DVDs and your VHSs up. Man, wow, look at time. You would stack your DVDs up and stuff like a library and you would go and get your movie and put it in. And nowadays, home entertainment systems are a little bit obsolete. Like nobody has the big old stacked desk where you put the DVD system up or the VHS, the TV would go in a little box and you had a film stuff that you would stack up like a library books. Like, I mean, I don't know, maybe my great uncle or somebody had that still, but most young adults my age don't have that anymore. We don't have a collection anymore. Our collections on our TV screens, it's on our laptops, it's our subscriptions, our passwords. And so people are out here complaining about these subscriptions, but I'm like, you got to understand the reason why we're paying for the subscriptions is because technically they've replaced all of the money we spent on DVDs and VHSs back in the day. Everybody want to complain about a music subscription, but I remember when I used to have to buy a CD every time an artist came out, which is, I miss those days sometimes. But now I don't have to. Now with a $15 a month subscription to YouTube Music, I can listen to music as much as I want, how much as I want, and I could go and listen to the Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. I can listen to Red Light by Madonna. I can listen to Britney Spears' whole entire collection. Like all of this music is at my fingertips. And to a certain extent, because all of these things are so accessible to us, we don't value the craft as much to a certain degree because it's so accessible to us. So we don't even consider how much work and effort still goes into making these movies, how much work and effort still goes to producing these albums because it's so attainable to us. And so it's like the best thing to happen to the industry, but the worst thing to happen to the industry because now more than ever, the world has so much access to this music and the art, but now it comes at a price that cuts at the profit margin and the creative risk taking of the industry at large. So now the studios are not going to roll the dice and try to make as many creative indie films because they're trying to make money. And we know that people, much as much people say they like these indie small films, unless a movie actor is going to be a producer, like that's why you're seeing so many movie actors are now producing the films they want to win Oscars for. Have y'all peeped that? Stay woke. Have you noticed, if you look at a lot of the major films that are winning Oscars and the actresses and actors that are winning Oscars for these performances, they are literally funding and co-producing these films so that they can actually be able to have something better than just a bunch of superhero films. And I'm going to throw my shots. Like, yeah, I know people like Marvel films, yada, yada, yada. But honestly, there has to be more at the box office than just Marvel films and Pixar and digital films. Like, how many more Despicable Me's do we need to watch? How many more Wolverine, Marvel, DC comic spinoffs? I mean, at a certain point, we're going to have to demand quality, right? And so what I'm seeing is these super rich Hollywood actors are getting to a point where they're invested in that realm. Like Martin Scorsese, these directors, they're starting to fork more money to make the films they want to make because the studios are not giving them the money anymore because they don't believe in these projects. And to be honest, a lot of these directors and filmmakers are funding these films not necessarily to make crazy profits to a certain degree, but to create, a legacy or boost their careers. It's interesting. Like they're funding films that is going to help them get the Oscar. So for example, there's that film that, oh my goodness, she just won Best Actress. I didn't think she should win it though, but she won it anyway. But Emma Stone just won the Oscar for this movie. She just won, I think it's called, Poor Things? The movie was called Poor Things. She is a producer of that film. And if she did not produce that film and put some money behind it to get it off the ground, she would not be getting her second Best Lead Actress Oscar in the past 10 years. Like Emma Stone would not be having an Academy Award for Poor Things because Poor Things would have not been produced or made if she didn't step in and use her wealth. Because a lot of these Hollywood actors, those big name actresses, they got hella money. They're getting paid ridiculous amounts of money to film. So when you look at some of these film budgets, you're like, well, wow, why is it 200-something million? Because a lot of these Hollywood actors are asking for $10 million, $20 million to star in these films. I'm not going to question whether they deserve it or not. But all I'm saying is that a lot of the Hollywood movie stars are asking for a lot of money. The budgets are bigger than what they used to be. But at the same time, movie studios are just saying no. So now celebrities, some of these major Hollywood stars, are having to humble themselves and fund and co-produce and put some money behind their films. And that's why you see a lot of these movie stars now being more active and engaging, doing more interviews, pushing the movies more aggressively, because they're trying to make their profit, but they're also trying to get some attention on these films and get some prestige. So it's complicated in the movie industry nowadays. But Matt Damon's theory and his explanation for why the quality of movies on mainstream Hollywood has been tankering, it's because of the fact that the industry has changed. Capitalism has reared its ugly head in a way that is not allowed for us as consumers to embrace film the way we are used to. There was a time where you can go to movie theater and you could see a historical pic that would make you cry. You would be able to see a romantic, funny rom-com as they would describe it. You could see a great action flick. You might see some interesting, what they would call ethnic cinema, some black comedy or black crime film, whatever that was in Hollywood. And you would be able to have variety. And there'll be some fun Disney animated family film or some animated film, right? The box office would have so much variety. If you go to movie theaters now, half of the movies are action-packed films, and the other half of the film of it is some sequel or spin-off of something that already came out. Try it. Like, look at the box office. Like, I'm going to look at the box office right now. Like, looking at the current box office right now. So let's look at the top movies that are out, right? Deadpool and Wolverine, it's a DC Comics film or Marvel, whatever. Alien Romulus, that's already a sequel. It's a sci-fi action film. It ends with us is a book adaptation from a major book that we already know. The Forge is an indie film that came out, right? That's a small black indie film that is made it to the box office. Blink Twice is a production film that is a film that is backed by a major. Zoe Kravitz is the director of the film, and she's backed it, and it is a mystery thriller type of film. But when you start looking very carefully beyond that, you start seeing, once again, Twisters, a remake from the original Twisters film, Inside Out 2, Despicable Me 4, right? You begin to realize that a lot of these films are basically sequels and spinoffs of other films. And then we look at the studios backing most of these films. Disney, Universal. Okay, I found Warner Brothers, another Disney film, but it's very much so Universal, very much so Warner Brothers, and then, of course, you might catch a couple of other ones, but mostly Lionsgate. I'm looking at I'm seeing Lionsgate on some of these lists, but it's mostly the same production studios that's leading the box office. It's just not the same anymore. And so it is a roll of dice. It is very much a roll of dice in assessing what's working, what's not working, how are we consuming films. But it's just something to take in. And it's been interesting to see how a lot of the studios have evolved through time and have changed. But that's just the industry. So if you was wondering, out loud how things are moving, that's why. With music, Post Malone is getting his next big Billboard hit. His new album, F1 Trillion, is number 1 on the Billboard chart. Of course, unseating Taylor Swift for the second time in the past, I want to say 17 weeks, the movie has been on the charts. The music has been on the charts. Post Malone's going country. Look how inspired the industry is going. I just always say, even though people have said Cowboy Carter hasn't had the same level of marketing and appeal that Beyonce's previous albums have had, it has made a cultural shift in the genre in ways that we haven't seen in a while. When Beyonce goes a certain way, she's on trend, she's on theme. And when we're looking at a lot of mainstream artists now want to go country, and we're seeing the success of black country artists, right? Like Shabuzi, that's because of the fact that the industry is taking notice, and she's a part of that change. Even though there are times where sometimes you would like to see some visuals, but I cannot deny that she continues to make a cultural impact. Sabrina Carpenter's new album, Short and Sweet, came out. The album is short and sweet. It's about 30-something minutes long. It's about 12, 13 songs. It's cute. It's a cute album. She's got nice, consistent bangers. She's definitely putting out the pop. It's a good pop album. She's putting out the bops, the stuff that people like to hear. It's cute. It's fun. I don't know if it's going to get nominated for Album of the Year. I don't get Album of the Year energy from it. But it's definitely going to stream. It's definitely going to do numbers. I enjoyed it. It's not the best album I heard this year, but it's not a bad album. It's a very just chill, put it on the car, play your music. It's a good, fun pop album. Not bad. So that's the optimism I have for it. Now with TV, Bel-Air, is now episode 4. This show is getting spicy. It's 10 episodes in total. I think 10 episodes. Yeah, it's about 10 episodes in total. And the season will end October 3rd or early October. The first week of October. October 3rd is, I think, when this season of Bel-Air ends. So so for those who want to catch up, Bel-Air, the new season, I think this is season 3. Bel-Air season 3. They gave you 3 episodes last week because that was the starter week. So they gave us 3 episodes, and then there is a 4th episode that just dropped this past Thursday. So the scheduling for this show is every week after the previous week. There's a fresh episode every Thursday leading up to early October. So 10 episodes, each episode so far. So I'm like we're like nearly halfway into the season already, slightly. So this upcoming Thursday will be episode 5, which will mean we'll be halfway. But what I've seen thus far, I mean, I just love this show. I do. I really appreciate it. Every time I watch it, I get like a level of joy. I'm emotionally invested in these characters. A lot of these characters are fleshed out well. Of course, my favorite character is Carlton. This Carlton is better than the original Carlton. I'm going to say that because there's so much education and depth in Carlton in this show that is very different from the original Bel-Air. And to be honest, to be fair, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air as its own 90s classic is incomparable to this Bel-Air. This is a drama versus Fresh Prince was more of a comedy. But they do a good job reimagining what that was like if you really put in your woke hat and understood the optics, the politics, and delved into what those characters really represent and their complexities, it's a beautiful show. And so I just love how modern it is. It finds this good balance of being insightful without being too preachy and performative. I really like that about the show, where you do pick up the themes and the messages, but it's not like banging in your head and trying to force you one way. The characters are just fleshed out in a very good way. Like, I just find that you can find things you don't like about certain characters, but you can also appreciate other aspects of them. That's how I feel about Will, the character on the show. Like, I sometimes find him a little whiny and a little bratty a little bit, but also there's parts in where I'm like, you know what? He's very courageous, and I like his determination. I like his ability to course correct himself at times, and he's self-reflective. And so I appreciate that about his character. Carlton is just giving everything to me. I just love how he's written. I just love the way the performer, the actor who plays him, he just knows this character. I feel like this is him, and I just love he's just so great. He is to me the heart of that show. Like, it centers on Carlton. Like, Bel-Air is not this show. This Bel-Air is not about Will Smith. They want you to think that. But this show, the star, the screen stealer of this show is the Carlton character. Like, easily, if you watch it through the vantage point of Carlton, you find the show more fascinating. If you watch it through the lens of Will Smith, like the character Will in the show, you are more likely to be underwhelmed or not paying attention. But if you watch it through the lens of Carlton, how he sees it, you can even frame the show in his vantage point, and it's phenomenal. Like, okay, this rich kid has a relative that he has to now share space with, and he's now having to come to terms with his elitist upbringing, his role in society, colorism, his mental health, because his whole life has been upended by the appearance of this other long-lost relative who, at one point, he finds him as competition. Other point, he finds him as the man who took his girlfriend. I don't want to get into the show too much. But if you look through the vantage point of Carlton and seeing the show, you find him to really be the true lead and a more compassionate character to follow. But there's other actors on the show that's just as great. Aunt Vivian in the show is well done. A very more nuanced character than the way that Viv was written in the comedy, the 90s show. But I try to tell people, do not compare a sitcom to a modern day drama. So I don't want to make comparisons as much, but I just love the show for what this show represents, and I can appreciate it, and it is really good. I must say I'm very impressed with this season thus far. So a lot of you asked me about this show, and some of y'all might know what I'm talking about, Love and Hip Hop Atlanta. And a lot of you all have got back to watching it, some of it because of my influence. Thank you. But there is one character in particular, or a person, because she's not a character. She's a real person on the show. Jasmine, which is, I've talked about on previous episodes. Jasmine is the woman who had the affair with Kirk Frost, who was married to Rashida. And they had a love child, Kirk Frost, and Jasmine did. Now, this past episode of Love and Hip Hop, they finally have their confrontation. Kirk and Jasmine, because Jasmine's been telling the streets and the cast, other cast members and various segments that basically, allegedly, she accuses Kirk Frost of pretty much quid pro quo. She accuses him of saying that if he would give her sex, then he would give her more money to support her and her family. Now, if these allegations are true, Kirk Frost is a piece of shit. Now, he was already a piece of shit for how he did Rashida throughout this entire show. But in this situation, if the allegations are true, which Kirk seems to deny it, It's really interesting because he seems to be very ambiguous and coy about the relationship that they have, that Jasmine and him have. Like, he accuses Jasmine, allegedly, of coming to the door naked, or topless or whatever, when he stops by to give her, money or whatever. She denies that, but at the same time, she's like, look, I got these text messages, I got these receipts to prove that you a dirty dog. Now, Rashida got word, I think, from Erica Dixon, who is Scrappy's baby mama, or as he refers to her as baby mama number one, or he's baby daddy number one, or whatever they think is cute about that situation. But basically, there is a narrative that, there's a certain narrative that, once Rashida found out from Erica, her whole demeanor was kind of like, because she heard about, basically, Jasmine's been saying this, right? Now, the first time, years ago, Rashida was acting like aloof, like she didn't know that Kirk was out here in these streets. Now, anybody who watched the show, anybody who watched Love and Hip Hop in the earlier seasons, y'all know Kirk had been in them streets, walking around. Somebody had a pass with Bambi, which is Scrappy's first wife, but baby mama number 2 for him. Back in the day, she was in that hot tub with Kirk. This is over 10 years ago, so we're not going to bring that up and try to shade her or judge her. It was a different time, y'all. Kirk Frost did not look like Kirk Frost today. Let me just say that. But anyway, Rashida hears this news, and her mindset is kind of like, well, I need to find out what's going on. And then I'm kind of like, girl, you ain't going to do anything. You ain't going to do nothing. So she brings up to Kirk. Kurt's obviously acting super nervous. He looks like he's lying. Like, he looks guilty. Okay, he doesn't seem to be coherent about what the hell is being said. And then he tells Rashida how Jasmine allegedly would show up to the door, naked when he would come. Now, Rashida, why is he telling you this now that these accusations out? Shouldn't he have been telling you that? Because part of me wonders, both of them could be lying or not lying, right? Like, part of me is like, okay, if Kurt says she came to the door half naked and she's claiming that Kurt wants something, did she come to the door half naked and you went in the door and then gave her more money, allegedly, speculatively? Like, could that be possibly the case where both of y'all are lying, but both of y'all are telling the truth at the same time? Maybe y'all not telling all the truths, but piecing it together. Clearly something's going on. I just feel like there's some sexual tension here. Like, he claims that she want him, but then he claims that he don't want her. Like, I just feel like there's something is going on. And I don't know if both of them are telling the truth. But then there's a part of me that feels like maybe Jasmine is trying to not tell everything. But Jasmine, if you're going to pull out his card and say this man is trying to pursue you, you better be telling the full truth. Like, because he act like there's something else going on. But I'm looking at Kurt like, okay. So I don't know who to believe. But I will be honest. I do believe Jasmine about Kirk. I don't necessarily think Kirk is telling the truth. I don't know if Kirk is lying. I feel like there's some truth amongst both of them. I don't believe that Kirk has not shown any interest in Jasmine, because I just feel like if Jasmine says she got them receipts, I believe she has those receipts. As far as Kirk, I'm like, why are you countering and saying that she's doing all this because she done hit you with some stuff? Like, you should have got ahead of it. But you also should have distanced yourself from her if that's what she was doing that's inappropriate to your marriage. Because I also feel like if she's being disrespectful like that, then you don't need to be coming to that door. So I just don't know. I don't know. I feel like there might be some truth between both of them in the situation. But I just don't believe Kurt when he claims he ain't been hitting her up or something, because she got them receipts. Now, here's where I go left with Jasmine. Because I do get that to some degree, Jasmine came on the show to, in many ways, let it be known that she just wasn't some home wrecker, because clearly she didn't wreck that home. The home is still there, and clearly there was problems before that home. So I don't think Jasmine's a home wrecker. But, okay, you want Rashida to know. Rashida knows. You wanted the cast to know, I guess, to let Rashida know. Okay, she knows. Now, here's the thing. Is Rashida going to leave Kurt? I don't think so. Because Rashida keeps letting everybody know that her and Kurt been together for a long time. They've been married for a long time. Let me tell you something. When certain people that have been in fucked up marriages love to talk about all this history, you know what? You can judge a lot of women who got out of a marriage maybe 1 year, 2 year, 3 years. If the marriage was abusive, toxic, the man wasn't doing right, or whatever the case was, it was incomparable. I would rather a woman, or anyone for that matter, leave the relationship if it has become so inhabitable and just despicable, right? To a certain point where you just can't even function, or it's just not even productive, or this person is making a fool out of you so much that the shit is embarrassing, right? My mother, I would say this, never had a marriage where she had some shit like that, right? But when she got to that point when my father, my biological dad, right, when they divorced, she left because the situation just wasn't doing what it's supposed to do. They were only married for maybe about roughly 5 years, possibly. But she left because she's like, look, I can't do this anymore. There are some women that we know in this world that will judge her and say, you should stick through it through the good and the bad. You don't got to if you don't want to. Okay? If you feel like the situation is not what it's supposed to be, leave. And there's a lot of people like Rashida that think that they can continue to weaponize being a mother, having all these kids, and having this and that and that. I don't care if you got kids and businesses and shit. If that man is not right to you and you feel like it is, stop trying to justify the seniority of the relationship to justify being there. And don't use it as a way to look down or to judge potentially other women who left the relationship much sooner. Because those women are not weak women. They're stronger women because they decide to get up and leave a situation that was not good to them. And so when I hear certain women and I hear people talk about, we've been together for a long time, that's my best friend. Like, is that really your best friend? Because your best friend been lying on you. Your best friend has been embarrassing you. Your best friend has consistently been giving what sacred, intimate things y'all have and has been giving it out to the streets for less the hassle. So I don't know if that's your best friend. Like, stop using that term to justify to be there. If you're stuck or you have tolerated the shit, just say that. Just say, you know what? Me and my man have an open relationship. My man can do what he want because at the end of the day, he gonna come home and pay these bills and he ain't gonna leave me. He gonna marry me. He might sleep with everybody in the streets, but nobody in the streets got a ring but me. And if that's the way you want it to be, then just say that. But trying to play like you've been betrayed and you don't know what's happening and this is going too far, stop it. Because the whole hood, including Stevie Wonder, could see what type of time Kurt Frost is on and how he feels about his marriage and how he looks like he's insufferable to it. Like, there's many times where that man like looks like Eeyore and he's dragging his feet and looking miserable and insufferable, watching, Rashida, complain about something. Well, he just feels like he's just trapped. And there's times where I even look at Todd, like, we're going to go there, since we're talking about Atlanta, Real Housewives of Atlanta, where you saw how Todd and Candy had their moments, where you could just feel like Todd just felt like shit because it was too many people in that marriage. They're still together, and maybe getting off of the show, I think, has made their relationship better. I feel like that's part of why Candy said, look, I got to stop being on this, because at some point, how many businesses, all this, we a partnership, we making money, like, yeah, that's cute. But at the end of the day, nobody wants to be married to a fucking business partner. They want to be married to a spouse that loves, respects, and cherishes them. And that's what people want. If you are so fortunate to have a person that you're married with, you could do business with and collaborate with on that level, that's great. But to front load making money together to justify the fuck shit of why you can't leave a fucked up marriage, like, is this a business transaction or is this a marriage? And I just feel like when I hear that kind of stuff, I'm like, you know what? Let me guess. Y'all ain't got a prenup? Let me guess. It will cost more to loser than the keeper. Like, it just seems like there's financial obligations outside of legitimate true love and respect. Like, I believe that Kurt and Rashida have love for each other. I'm not going to say they don't. But at the same time, I'm not foolish enough to assume that this is a healthy visual display of love and marriage that is useful. And I think it annoys me when Rashida tries to act like, oh, we the OG couple. Y'all the OG couple because y'all really can't break up with each other. It seems like if y'all was to break up, there'll be some financial division and some money division, some issues. And Rashida's a woman of a certain age where she might not want to get back out there and trust and get involved. I get it. She's been with this man for nearly two decades. So I can get why she might not want to change her life abruptly in that way because she don't know any better. But this is the lessons that we got to teach. And I tell young people my age, young adults like myself that's navigating relationships in marriage and life to say, listen, look at Rashida. Look at these women and these people that are old enough to be our parents. Do we really want, do we want to be in a situation like that where we feel trapped, where we feel like we're in a situation where we're obligated to be in it because of all this other perceptions and stuff? If your relationship does not feel equally yoked, which is what I talked about earlier in this episode, get out of it. Just take yourself out, because what's going to happen is you're going to stay in longer, and the longer you stay in it, the more miserable you're going to feel. And then you're going to look back and say, I wish I would have did this earlier, or you're going to have resentment about all the opportunities that passed you. Be committed and invested. And if you don't feel that, it's okay. Have those conversations. But life is too short to be in situations that just don't fulfill you and give you love and joy. I can't tell you how many people come up to me sometimes and be like, oh, I wish I had that. And these are people that are married. These are people that's actually in relationships. And I'm just like, why can't you not? Is what I ask. And a lot of these people don't even have kids. So they can't even say, we connected because of kids. But they're trying to keep appearances. They're trying to, get cosigns and things. You're doing it for the wrong reasons. And we got to be honest with people in our networks, our circles, when we see people getting in situations, entanglements, or marriages and situations where it's like, are you really, I know a couple in New York, I ain't gonna name no names, but I feel like, and some of my listeners might know this, but there are some people that I know, not close, I won't call them friends, because that wouldn't be accurate, but they're in my orbit, in my parameter. And I look at certain folks in these marriages or situations, I'm like, you didn't get married because you wanted to be with that person. You got married because you was forced to get married from your parents or people around you put pressure on you. You got married because you was with this person for 5 years and they wanted a ring and you wanted to throw a ring at them to shut them up on bugging you about the engagement. You got married or got interested in the relationship because you was in some dire financial straits. And so now you feel like to repay the person back, you need to commit with them because you're scared to be off for the damn meal ticket. You didn't decide to get married or got married in a situation because everybody else in your circle loves the person for you. But behind the scenes, this person's a piece of shit to you and you're scared to admit it that this isn't what it is. You got married and got involved with a person because you didn't know any other way. And so there's a lot of reasons that I've seen over the years where people have gotten in situations and then they get in these situations and they can't get out of them, so they become villains. Basically, they do shit they shouldn't be doing, or they try to create new rules as they go because they can't be honest about the fact that they made a bad decision. And people look at me and say, why I was the way I was in college when it came to dating. I had fun. I wasn't as committed. I dated a couple of people, had some relationships with people. Some people were just hookups. But I gave myself that because I knew what I wanted. And when I got into a very fortunate space to meet Prince Charming, it was very much like, wow, this is it. This is what it should feel like. This is what love feels like. This is what, a relationship that I want. This is what it should feel like. And you just know. And you know when it isn't hitting, right? And we know those signs. And when you know when it's not hitting, get out. I just don't know what else to tell you. Get out. Stop trying to force things. Stop trying to make fetch. Because when you go, when there's that point where you decide to pivot and go left, That's typically where you say, I'm going to stay. Have you ever heard of a Greek tragedy where there's a story arc for a Greek tragedy where there's that moment in Greek tragedy where they call it the point of no return, where a person can decide to go left in the story or right, but they choose to go left, right? And then after that, misfortune happens and there's the climax and everything else. But that moment in that story where you've seen it, like The Little Mermaid is a good example where it doesn't end tragically. But when Ariel decides to assign her voice to Ursula, see what she makes that moment in the story where she chooses between left and right and she goes left, right, while making that decision. The movie's about to get interesting. You watch The Princess and the Frog. You know that moment where they sign off fate and they make this radical decision that might be risky, right? That point. Everybody, I feel like, in certain situations know that point. And when you decide to stay and rock with it anyway, when you should just get up and go and leave, that is when the conversation in the story pits. Now, listen, there could be moments of disagreement. There could be all that's life. But there are moments in certain relationships where you can look. There was a situation in a previous relationship where I should have left this guy alone. It was a very clear moment where I should have just been like, you know what? I'm good. Let me just go ahead and just let this be where it's at. But I was like, feeling all the feelings, give a person a chance, whatever. And I was like, I was 20 years old, so I ain't even gonna act like I had all the answers. So I ain't mad at myself. But in retrospect, I gave this person that chance. And then the moment I did that, I was reminded again, why I was so stupid for doing it. And the problem is that the mindset I had then was, I'm going to, if I give them this second chance, they're going to appreciate me better and do right by me better and blah, 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 blah. Like I'm teaching somebody a lesson. When you come in a relationship where you got to leverage and all that kind of shit in love, it never works out because people, when you give them a second chance, a person is going to move on. And so if you think that they're going to now have to keep on having a comeuppance every time, you're going to have this comeuppance every time, it don't work that way. Because really, if you give a person a second chance, you, in many ways, you forgive. You don't have to forget, but you're supposed to really kind of, in many ways, move on and really move on. If you're going to keep throwing it up in their face, you're not over it. And if you're not over it, then why are you still with them? Message. So, it's been interesting just this summer, just seeing certain situations, you all messaging me for relationship advice. I've seen some patterns of messages and experiences that you all have shared. And I just said, as we get into the fall and get ready for this new season, just some of these summer situations, let it sunset as a summer sunset. So this concludes this episode. I definitely had a lot of fun talking. There was a lot to talk about. But Lit Brothers are going to get super ready. We're going to have our big summer finale together. We're going to go to AC. We're going to have an AC trip in Atlantic City. The Lit Brothers are going to have a lovely Atlantic City trip Labor Day weekend before we start school. Shout out to all my teachers and folks right now. Y'all starting school. Y'all starting teaching up again. Y'all back out at it again. Shout out to all of you all who got kids and starting college again. My brother is starting his senior year at Temple this week. Yes, y'all came with me through this journey of this podcast when he first got to Philly and was starting Temple. Now he's at his final damn school year. So shout out to him on his journey. It was great to see him at the pool party, the PBJ pool party, which was stellar again. Shout out to everybody who showed up today. Oh my goodness. I saw all of my girls. I saw Lana. I saw Candace. I saw Dr. Parks. I saw Sharon and Lauren and the Lit Brothers, Gio and George and Josh. I'll see his ass in Atlantic City with the boys. But to everybody who came out, shout out to DJ Will, to Philly Will, the DJ Philly Will, who was doing his things. All of my LBs who came out and showed love. It was just a great time. I'm just still thinking about that pool party. It was a really, really good time. And it just was a great, nice summer wrap up for everything that just has been this summer. So, that's everything. And as always, be well and be best. Ernestly Speaking is recorded in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and can be found on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, To stay up to date with the latest on the show, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Mr. Ernest Owens. Use the hashtag Ernestly Speaking to tell me what you thought about this episode, and check out my website at ernestowens.com.